price of freedom is death. We're coming to get our check.
Black first, my brothers and my sisters. We have a very, very special broadcast for you all this evening. Before we get started, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a thumbs up and share this because it's very special guests here. Now, I made a poll about it. I asked if you guys wanted to see Dr. Short and Winters come back, and everybody said yes. So without any further ado, they have returned, scheduled this. Now, last time we had them on, we were going to talk about having like a book review or a book meeting, whatever we called it, but this is what we were going to talk about. So that was last month, and now we're having this month. So we have special guests with us this evening, Dr. Clyde Winters. How are you, Doctor? And then Dr. Short is, I think he stepped away for a couple of seconds, but Dr. Winters is with us right now. How are you, Dr. Winters? You're muted. You're still okay.
I'm fine. What about you on this rainy evening in Chicagoland?
It's rain. That's why I got the hoodie on, because it is raining. I just kind of got back to the house. But I'm doing well so far. So far I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good day. This has been a good week. You know, a lot of nice. The weather is a little bad today, but it's going to get better, and stuff like that. And so that's kind of heartwarming, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I'm looking forward to good weather coming up soon.
Yeah.
So that's good. Until we wait for Dr. Short, how have you been? Is there any? I know you've been doing other broadcasts on other channels. How is that going for you?
It's going well, you know, because the thing that I do on other channels is I've basically been talking about history, you know. Mm-hmm. I'm an anthropologist, linguistics, but I studied history. You know, I taught educational psychology and educational research methods at Governor State University and also at St. Xavier. But I've been mainly talking about history, because the fact is that we haven't really been taught our history. We've been taught a distorted history. We've been taught a history in a sense that makes it very difficult to understand our present situation. You know, if you noticed Harold Cruz in his book Rebellion and Revolution, he made a point of the fact is that you have to have a firm historical base to be able to understand your situation and to be able to create any revolutionary movement, you see. And so what I do, I'm on the Reverend Matthews platform. So we talk about a lot of stuff. I've been on Sister Shanice and a couple others too. But basically what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to get people to understand the FBB, Foundational Black Britons, and FBA, Foundational Black American History. So that's my main objective, you know, because we don't know our history, and a lack of understanding of your history definitely means that you're not going to be able to understand what's going on, you know, because, you know, reading Rebellion and Revolution by Harold Cruz, you know, it woke me up because I was a teenager back in the 60s, you know. Since I was a teenager back in the 60s, I'm in high school, and you're believing a whole lot of mishmash. And see, what Harold Cruz does is that he brings into perspective that situation in terms of understanding what was going on in the 50s and 60s that led up to what we call the Black Power movement. Because see, you know, Harold Cruz is kind of hard on the Black Power movement, but at the same time, he gives a realistic and a reality check to all of us, you know. But what do you think, Dr. Short, the major player?
Well, Harold Cruz does one thing that does not happen for the most part in most of what we call Black studies, Africana studies, you name it, and that is critical thinking. Mm-hmm. and critical analysis and contextual analysis and literary he basically, he's like a little Chihuahua dog that tears up your shoes and stuff, whatever it is he puts in his mouth and rips through it. That's what he would do with whatever the trends were in the time in which he was living. He would rip it up and see how it landed. Most of what we consider Black studies, or what normally is, in the words of Martin Kilson, a political scientist and one of my mentors, is ego balming, making us feel better, or look at all the great things. We had 100 Blacks with college degrees at the height of chattel slavery. And I'm not mad at 100 degrees, but damn, most of us are chained up. We have a kind of a psychosis thing, in particular, if you're Black, established elites, the Negroes that think that they're the top creme de la creme of Blackness, the Negrorati, or whatever you want to call them, the boule, have a way of saying, well, at least the glass isn't empty. They left some spit in it for us to drink. It's better to have some spit than an empty glass. And Harold Cruz would be saying, well, why not break the glass? At least they couldn't spit in it. So he looks at things differently. And again, this Black ego bombing. Oh man, the March on Washington. I mean, 250,000 people met there nonviolently. But what did it accomplish? Who had their hands on the microphone cord to unplug it if Dr. King said anything too radical? How many units of the United States Army were ready to murder the people there, right there in Washington, D.C., had they even been concerned? It's the same way with the Million Man March, where the entire United States Army was on alert to crush Black people back in October 1995. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Bill Clinton gave a speech that we were all one America, even though there are many Americas, and there's some that are richer and more prosperous than others. So most of our history, in fact, it's like a dog that eats its own poop and vomits it up and eats it again. And that's when your dog is sick. That's sort of what we do. We're consistently hearing about Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, love them all. But we only hear about the great, outstanding this, that, and the other. And we have this great Black inventor, but who has his patents? Where did the profits go for these great inventors, right? How many of them, like Granville T. Woods and others, had everything stolen from them in the courts? This kind of history, unless you get into an in-depth biography, typically we don't get much other than, wow, someone Black did something. Wow, someone Black made a bowel movement. Wow, they even wiped their own behind. Yeah, Blacks wiped their behind. See, this really points to the fact that there are a lot of people who get into positions to write or to get in positions of education who in reality have contempt for their own people. And in fact, much of what we call Black research is from a minimalist perspective. What do I mean by minimalism? For them, if just 10% of Black children were raised in a male-female home, they would celebrate at least 10%. I'm a maximalist. I'd like to see it be 95%, if not damn 110. Do you understand what I'm saying to you, Brother Afro Elite? We tend to celebrate practically nothing. If kids in the 12th grade can read on a first grade level, when they're on their way to college, they'll say, at least he can read. And this is how a lot of what happens in our community or collective of Black people is being grateful or thankful or excited about not total failure, but close to, or not being able to say, all right, Black power did get us to take the lie out of our hair and stop using skin lighteners, but beyond certain things in terms of culture, which are necessary, how many billionaires did it make? How many self-sufficient communities did it make? how many new black businesses or new newspapers or media. We tend not to do it that way. Or if we do get like, well, we had some big black businesses in the 60s. We had Motown. We loved Motown, but what if there could have been 20 of them?
But
Are you understanding me?
But I think the most important thing when you think about Harold Cruz, because we're talking about this book, Rebellion or Revolution by Harold Cruz. And see, this is a very important book. And the reason
Yes.
that's important is because the fact is that he crystallized a lot of things that were going on. I was a teenager in the 60s. Yes, I know it doesn't seem like that today, but I was a teenager. But what Harold Cruz brings up is that he brings up the fact that when we created that Black Power slogan, and we created this whole idea of Black Power, we really didn't build up that base. You know, just like
that philosophical, historical base of analysis and research and study that we may have done. You're holding up this. People should be aware that there is a black movement for freedom called the Negro Convention Movement that started in the early 1800s, and it literally ran all the way until just after the Civil War. So if you wonder how black folks, with everything against them, armies of whites mass murdering black people, there were some black folks who had some kind of plan of what they wanted to do if black folks could get their freedom.
And see, and it's very important to understand is that what Harold Cruz does is that he looks at the fact that they had those developments, we developed those ideas, but he also looks at the fact that white people have been very strategic. As Dr. Short has told you, is that to really have political power, to really have power within a society, you have to have economic power. And the white man has always, in a sense, been encouraging us to always look for education. But see, education only leads to employment. It doesn't lead to independence, because the independence begins with being able to take your monies and develop your own businesses. And I think that's one of the focus, that's been the focus of the European ever since he's been in contact with us, is that we have to keep those black people away from having the economic resources, because they know in a sense that to have power, you have to be able to have money. Go ahead, Dr.
Hey,
Short.
Brother Afro Elite, that article that I sent you on Citibank's research that
I can pull it up if you want me to.
Share that with people. These white folks say that they've cheated us out of $14 trillion.
Yeah,
they've cheated us out of $14 trillion, and yet $16 trillion people say is too much to give us for reparations. And this has been in recent history. Blacks have been cheated recently out of $14 trillion, says one of the leading white fiducial institutions in this country. And that's the other thing that Harold Cruz is trying to say. In order to have an economic base, in order to do these things, you've got to know who you are, what you're about, and look at it realistically, and what can you do with what you have to develop a philosophy, a way of life, and an economy to put you in a position where you truly can either force the reform of society nonviolently, or if you have to have a fight, at least you're organized. When you think about it, we have a thing called gangs that should be called ethnic protection organizations, which is what they once were, until they got criminalized by other people and the drugs and all were brought in. We at one point had Black organizations around the country protecting our communities. And then because we didn't unite a desire of, in particular, young men and men who had done some military training to protect their communities, we had the guns, but not the mental, philosophical wherewithal of how to use it, who to point it at, and why. And why are we, if we're going to have a urban rebellion or whatever, you need to know why and for whom. And what he points out, if I can cite, I think it's in either chapter 8 or 9. He said that what Black people were doing in the 60s were already worn out gimmicks. They were doing things to get attention, but they were not grounded in anything that was going to bring about substantive change. He was saying this, and even he quotes a punk-ass Bayard Rustin saying the March on Washington was a failure right after the march. So a lot of people knew, even probably Dr. King himself knew, that they were just going through the motions, because in reality, we had not done the work. If you look at a parallel movement that was fighting against the same society but far abroad, would be the Vietnamese. Most people don't understand that the backbone of the Vietnamese revolution or civil war, whatever you want to call it, against the United States, France, and whoever was helping them, was that you had both the Vietnamese Communist Party and you had your Buddhist monks who have a history and a tradition of being the intellectual foundation for movements to expel the Chinese, the Mongols, the Khmer from Cambodia, that they had a tradition and a history and a philosophy about having their own space. Mm-hmm. This has not been developed by our people. In fact, what white people have not been willing to give us, but they promoted, is assimilation or inclusion. When they're not going to include us, they're not going to integrate us. And so what we've been getting from white people is cultural suicide. And our Black leadership has been leading us into, the French word is abattoir. Abattoir is a smart ass way for saying a butcher shop. And so what you see now is a result of a philosophical failure, an intellectual failure. It's a fraud. And even now, and the fraud isn't just in the civil rights people. You've got a fraud among your fake liar, Afrocentrics and others.
No, don't put Afrocentrics in there. Your Africological group.
Okay, well, Afrofragical, because these same folks that are running after Egypt, they are now in Egypt about to riot because Cleopatra is being represented as a light-skinned Black woman. I'm not blaming the people here, but there's so much emphasis on claiming and trying to get in with another group of people or another civilization that we don't care. If we were wealthy, powerful, and organized, they wouldn't dare, because the Egyptian people eat because Black people pay taxes. We feed those people. And how dare them get upset that we talk about the Black origin of Egyptian civilization? We have the capacity. If we went and lobbied and said, we don't want any more food subsidy, if these people do any more racist stuff, there would never, ever be another problem about anyone talking about anybody in Egypt a few thousand years ago being Black. But that's when you have organization, you have power, you have philosophy, you have used, Jews do it all the time. I'm going to tell you, this is what Harold Cruz was also trying to get people to look at, that there are models for how people who are behind the 8 ball get their groove back, get their mojo back, get in control of their communities. Malcolm X was talking about control the Black community, and people criticize him for that, but at least control something and use it as a basis to do more.
And see, that's what Harold Cruz wanted to make us understand this. Harold Cruz wanted to make us understand that we allowed the dominant or white society to decide on our leadership. And we even allowed the white society to decide on our historical curriculum. This is very important to understand. When I was going to school and I took Black history, the emphasis that in Black history was to teach us that W.B. Du Bois was correct and Booker T. Washington was wrong. They wanted to teach us that we should just want to be what W.B. Du Bois talked about in terms of being intellectuals. They felt that we should be working towards intellectualism instead of, in a sense, gaining those industrial skills to be able to own our own business. But what Harold Cruz made clear is that Black liberation is the right to own. If you don't own anything, you can't have any control anything. They allowed us, in a sense, to be enamored with our church, with the church and preachers and leaders to lead us. And many of these leaders, because of the fact that they're working for the bourgeoisie, those people who already have, then they have never, in a sense, wanted to see a rise in terms of the grassroots.
That's true. And not only that, what Cruz also did, and this is very important. You know, I was doing a taping the other day, and one of these show panelists who was white came out and trashed reparations and all this other kind of stuff. I was delicately told him, unless you know about reparations and who's gotten it, you can't say it didn't work. So that's your feelings. That's not relevant. That's one. Then number two, Black Lives Matter is nothing but the Weathermen 2.0 with black actors. Therefore, Black Lives Matter doesn't even really exist. Philosophically, it is nothing but the Weathermen with black people in it. In fact, Patrice Cullors, allegedly related to me, was trained by a Jewish man who was in the Weathermen called Eric Mann. Eric Mann was the one who had the not-for-profit that allowed Black Lives Matter to collect money. So when you gave money to Black Lives Matter, you were giving it to someone Jewish. And I'm just saying, you know, and I'm not picking. Everybody knows I've got Jewish ancestry on all sides of my family. So, yeah, I'm going to snitch. I'm a black Jew. I'm a good kind, right? And so I'm going to just say to you that the Marxists, the leftists, they're parasites, they're phonies, they're frauds. And he in particular, the reason you don't hear about Harold Cruz is that when you go into a university, and the one thing I do know how to do is pass classes. I don't know how to do anything else. When you go to a university, and particularly if you get to a graduate level, you're either going to have to be a conservative sellout, whether you're Catholic or Republican or neoliberal or libertarian, or you're going to have to go in a cultural direction. So you're going to be a women's studies, you're going to be a feminist, or you're going to be a Marxist, right? And you could be a black culturalist, but you can't be into black liberation. And the Marxists, they talk radical enough, like burn the system down and all you have to lose is your chains. But in reality, the Marxist program has nothing for black people. It never will. But a lot of the black people, I mean, we've been impressed, and there've been some good people who thought that they could make Marxism work for black people. Paul Robeson, William Patterson. There have been some good people who were Langston Hughes. We've had some black folks that were communists that cared about black folks who thought that the leftists, Marxists, and again, I'm going to say this, and I'm not picking, the American Communist Party is dominated by American Jews. It's just a fact. I don't care if you don't like it. It's just a fact. So a lot of the things that you'll see black people get praised for are things controlled by people who are Marxist or socialists, and often, if they're not white Anglo leftists, they're white Jewish leftists, socialists, or anarchists. And it's really not about us. We are useful to them attaining what they want to do. For example, there is a guy named Moses Hess, who's a Jewish communist from Germany, who was saying in the 1860s, if you wanted to take America down, use black people. It's not free and uplift black people, but use black people, like you saw in 2020, to attack America. And so when you get shot on someone's porch, or when you get black folks killed, beaten, they're being mass evicted, one, we should control stuff and we shouldn't get shot. But these people have used, and their whole concept in Marxism of a revolutionary Holocaust, they designate that to get this communist revolution that they want, you need to be prepared to sacrifice a minimum of 10% of the people to get the new society. And surprise, surprise, they've decided to sacrifice Black people, get Black people exterminated in order to bring about a Marxist, classless society. So you'll see a lot of Black folks, Black Ururu, you name them, they all run with these They are basically dupes. You take Black Ururu, I'm not trying to pick on the good stuff that they do, but Penny Hess, same name as Moses Hess, from the Hess fortune. And I suspect that she's Jewish. They had the purse strings to Black Ururu down in Florida, the ones that got raided by the FBI and they're screaming all the militant stuff. It's just an example, about the NAACP. Urban Greed, I work for them too. They're about the same. Southern Christian Leadership Conference, let me tell you, I was in that. And I remember talking to a woman whose name is Betty Brooks, who was running the Southern Christian Leadership Conference Foundation in New York. And I asked her, well, why aren't we getting anything done? Why can't we do this? And she says, well, they don't like us anymore. I was like, they who? The Jews. I mean, that Martin Luther King's organization was being funded by Jews. Stanley Levinson, who raised a lot of money, Martin Luther King's speechwriter, he's Jewish. And by the way, his ex-wife was screwing a guy named Kaminsky, who was a CIA, FBI type person with a different name, who's Harry Belafonte's manager, who also, I think, was screwing Elaine Brown and the Black Panthers. Am I right, Brother Winters? And so,
I think so.
These people, a lot of what you see is this Black left. Yeah. They don't mind. They don't mind sleeping with you, putting you out front, but you're not the main event.
And see, and there, we have to talk about the Black left, because the Black left, what Harold Cruz shows is that the Black left, they're just as integrationist as the civil rights people. Okay,
that's right.
For example, this past Saturday, I look at the Karen Hunter program every Saturday, and they talk about Black history. So this Saturday, we see Greg Carr. He's trying to say that this new guy, Justin Pearson, is doing, in a sense, is being able to code switch when he's acting like he's Black power. But the whole point is that this man, Greg, Carr, is also advocating what he thinks is Pan-Africanism. But see, they don't know anything about Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism was based upon the idea that there's Black people, but Black people have different heritages, and you must respect the heritages. But see, these Black power people today, what they're doing, in a sense, is that they're really trying to kiss some white ass so that they can maybe, hopefully, be accepted among white people. But see, that's the whole understanding that you get when you read Harold Cruz, that even if you try to accommodate, even if you try to integrate, you will never be accepted by white people. And yet we find that even our so-called Black power people today, these people, in a sense, are fakes. They're fakes. They're fake Afrocentrists, because they're not really Afrocentrists, because they don't really believe in Black people. Because see, as Harold Washington, as Harold Cruz makes clear, you have to have a Black identity. And see, most of these people do not have a Black identity, because see, to have a Black identity means that you have to be B1. And see, they're afraid to be B1. And see, that's what makes this whole new approach towards looking at our survival based upon grassroots ideology. What is grassroots ideology based on? It's based on the idea that we no longer have any leaders, because everybody's a leader. Everybody's a leader. Number two, you see, Harold Cruz said that our biggest problem back in the day was that we didn't have, in a sense, a philosophy to guide our quest for Black power. But see, luckily today, through the research of Neely Fuller, we do have, in a sense, a philosophy to put a check in terms of how we progress. And that philosophy is based upon the code, a code of conduct. And when you practice this code of conduct, it integrates all Black people into this whole idea that we're one. See, white people, They made a specific effort in the 1980s to destroy the idea of black. They wanted black people to stop thinking about the word black as a unifying element. And the reason they wanted black people to move away from thinking about black as a unifying element was because in the 60s, we said that there was black pride. We said that there was a black culture. You see, people don't even understand all the great nations, all the great black nations that ever existed, they identified themselves as black. They didn't identify themselves by their country. You know, the Egyptians, they called themselves Kametru. What is Kametru? The black people. The Sumerians, they called themselves, you know, Sagiga, the black people. The first black rulers of China called themselves the Shi, Li Min, the black people. Why? Because see, black people understand that to really be successful, you have to relate to God. And see, to black people, God was black. And see, the white man teaches you that God does not exist, that you can't see God. But among the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the ancient Olmecs, they recognized God as being black, and they said that we were in the bosom of God. And how did they prove that we were in the bosom of God? They want you to go out at night, and when you looked into the sky, you saw blackness. And because you saw blackness, that in a sense encouraged us to see many people over here today, because of their ignorance and their lack of understanding of black history, they think that when the Sumerians, the Egyptians, when they called themselves black, they think that they were calling themselves black because of their color. No, you can see some of the Egyptians were red, some of them were yellow, some of them were cinnamon, some of them was red bone, but they called themselves black because they recognize that a true understanding of your identity means that you recognize that you are the son and the child of God. And see, that's why they call themselves black. Although the Hebrews tried to, in a sense, capitalize on this thing, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, they already said that they were black, and by being black, we were the sons of God. And because the only way that we can progress is to have an understanding that God, the master, whatever name you want to call him, he's the one who allows us and protects us. And see, that's why they've sent agents into the black community to try to get black people to turn away from worshiping God by talking about Jesus, you see, or by saying that Jesus was a white man on a stick, or whatever you want to believe. But see, the Sumerians, Sagiga, the Egyptians, Kametru, the black people, because the only way that you can gain, in a sense, any type of power is recognizing it's through your blackness. And see, the white man, he was successful. Today, he has many people afraid to call themselves black, because when you call yourself black, you're putting yourself on the same pedestal that was held by the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Assyrians. See, the white man, he tries to call himself white, but he knows in a sense that he's not the civilizer. He's not the creation of all. He's not, in a sense, the leader. We're the leader. We're the first. And we're the end and the beginning and the end. In the Bible, when the Bible talks about the first man, they called him what? Adamu. What does Adamu mean? Black, of the soil, the red soil, the black soil. Look at the Bible dictionary or Quran dictionary. What I'm saying is this, is that when Tariq Nasheed, when he developed that whole idea that we're foundational Black Americans, what does this mean? Foundational Black American is an African concept because it unites the Black Protestants, the Black Catholics, the Aboriginal Black people, the Cherokee, the Moor, the Hebrew Israelite. See, that's what makes Black so powerful. And that's why everybody is trying to attack that whole idea of being Black, because they don't understand that when you say that you're B1, when you say that you're Black, that means that you recognize that you're, in a sense, a son, a daughter of God. Through that power of God, then you have everything. You see, this is what Harold Cruz was talking about. You have to have an identity. And the only way that we can be progressive, the only way that we'll be able to have any power is to have a Black identity. but not a black identity based upon race, but a black identity based upon the idea that we are a superior people. We're the first people.
Now, I wanted to add this name. Can you see it?
I'm gonna zoom you in. I'm gonna make you bigger for a second so everybody can see it. You gotta kind of focus it a little bit.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that Harold Cruz experienced was that a lot of black folks that were in the
It's
Communist
blank.
Party.
It's blank now. It's off.
His name is Manning Johnson. Manning Rudolph Johnson. Look it up on Wikipedia. He's got a book on Amazon, Audible, and he talks about the fraud of the Communist Party and how they used black folks, pushed them to be in integrated settings. They had to have a white wife, and anyone that was too into blackness got destroyed in the Communist Party. I want to also say to you that 100 years ago or thereabout, I think of the Communist International of 1924, they decided to create a black republic of 5 states united in America. Not that they really wanted black people to have it, but to get black folks to think we were going to get something from them. And it was really about promoting a black revolution in the country. And they understood, because they're not giving you any guns or anything, that black folks would be slaughtered. The other thing I want to echo in with what Dr. Wences was saying, there is a document that you can get. I tried to find it, but it talks about the United States government. The National Defense University did a book called Defiant Again. And they were talking about people in other countries in South and Central America getting angry with white oppression and dominance. And their fear was that, in particular in Colombia and in Brazil, that the Black American struggle was influencing black people in South and Central America, which would bring about major social change to the disadvantage of the white majority, or should I say the white minorities that are there. And they wanted to prevent the emergence of black consciousness in Brazil and in Colombia. And the National Defense University, which is right here in Washington, D.C. Let me see if I can pull up this publication, because it's called Defiant Again. And they were really worried. They've been trying. They don't want affirmative action. They don't want revolutionary philosophy among blacks in South America, based on them studying us to show you how much we're a threat. Even when our movement's at a low tide, it's reverberating with people around the world, and they're trying to cut it off at the roots. And this is another reason why they do not like our people, and they don't like this black awareness. Mm-hmm. Are you understanding me?
And so I know a good example of that was after the Floyd murder. When the Floyd murder, and they started protesting, and when those young people got into the streets, not the ones twerking, but the ones who got into the street and started demanding justice and an attack on white supremacy, what happened? We find that the foundational Black Britons, the Black people in Britain, what did they do? In Manchester. Manchester was the center of the African slave trade. A lot of Black people in Britain began to tear down the statues that they had made of all these great slave merchants. These people became billionaires and millionaires. And so we do have an effect worldwide.
Here it is, and you can get it. It's called Defiant Again.
You got to bring it a little bit closer.
I see it. Okay, you got it.
Uh-huh.
And I'll send this to you. Let me see. How do I get this back to you, to link this back? I have copies somewhere. You know, when you get these books, they pile up, or you put them in storage, and then you can't remember where it is. But it's called Defiant. Define again indigenous people and Latin American security.
Where can they find?
Send it to
It's
Afro
online. You can get a free download. I'm a good teacher. I always make certain that you can get whatever I'm talking about. I never bring it up and not back it up.
Well,
this is what I don't like about some of these people in these platforms. They say shit and then they don't have a source or anything. Don't believe me. All you need to do is put in define again indigenous people and Latin American security. You can get it from Stanford University, but there's a download on here. Write this down if you can. It's ETH.
You can send it to me if it's easier. You can just send it to me.
Let me see. Hold on. You know what I'll do?
Afro Elite can put it in the description later. You can put it in the description later, and anybody who's interested can find it in the description. So we can always do that.
Tell me your email. I can email it to you right now. What's a good email?
That's cool.
Send it to afroelite10@gmail.com.
Afroelite10.
That's just 10.
Okay.
At Gmail, yeah.
I'm going to send this to you, and that way everybody can have a copy. This was being made when I went down to Brazil. I got into trouble with the Black movement there because they wanted to know why Black Americans were visiting people in Rio. And so people thought I was a spy because I came over to talk to people about Black people being murdered by the police. And right after I left, people from the State Department came in asking this Black group questions. And after that, I was dragged into a room and people interrogated me. Who the hell are you? Why are you bringing these white people down us? I said, I didn't know anything. I'm just mad that they're killing people here. I just sent that to you. You should have that. Share that with people because they're talking about the Indians, but what they're really mad about, the key countries in the hemisphere where Black folks can flip it are Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil. If those countries change, and they Panama, then this would shift the power system because Brazil's got over 100 million Black people. Yeah. Both Colombia and Venezuela have anywhere from 15 to 20 million Black people. You're talking about between those countries, somewhere between 150 to 200 million people who are Black, who are in South and Central America. We've got more people than they've got. Most people, because they don't have this Black awareness, this Black pride in South and Central America on the same level that we do, they've been controlled better than we have, even when they're in the majority.
Yeah, and see, but they've controlled us too. We're in the majority over here, but they've convinced us to be minorities. But let's get back to this.
Can I just say that I did get the email? This is what it's going to look like.
Don't worry,
I'm going to put it in the thing for y'all to get later.
Yeah, and thank you for that email. So I can send you stuff while we're talking. So the one thing about what we're doing here is, we're educating, and this is one more. This is a really good book by one of the best scholars in the country, Dr. Carol Anderson. That's one of the smartest Black women that's ever lived. And this talks about how the NAACP and these groups that weren't Marxists, but the integrationist people decided just about 80 years ago not to solve Black people's problems, to betray us, to not stand up, to be, pardon my language, dick suckers to the Democratic Party, that they would make certain that our people would not get their full freedom, that they would not get reparations, that they would not get human rights.
Because they don't want us to have any true independence. Because the fact is that those people, they try to use us as a buffer. You got to understand, that's a very important book. You got to understand in a sense is that why is it that Hebrews and Moors Hebrews and the so-called more scientists are always telling you that black is not a word. Black is not in law. You see, that's because of the fact that, look, we know now when Malcolm X was assassinated, everybody in his security was a damn police agent. They were police agents. And see, you've got so many people now trying to tell you to turn away from black because they understand what Dr. Short is talking about. If you try to get black people unified based on our identity, remember, when you say you're a foundational black American, that means in a sense that you're identifying yourself as having an African ancestry. But although you have an African ancestry, you're also recognizing that you have different heritages. Like you could be a black Indian, you could be a black Moor, you could be a black Hebrew. And see, that's what makes FBA, Foundational Black Americans, so dangerous. Because see, I'm banned from India. I can't go to India. And the reason I can't go to India is because a lot of my research made a lot of the Tamil people over there start to get militant, start to, in a sense, say that demand their history being taught in the schools, demand that there's a true account of the history. Because of the fact that I did a lot of that research, I can't go to India. Do you know that my YouTube, I have over 240 YouTube videos, and my YouTube videos are banned in India. They can't see my videos in India.
And can I add something to what you're saying? Dr. Winters is making a point. A lot of people don't know that India had a Black Power movement. They were called the Dalit Panthers.
Right.
And they were almost murdered, all of them. I have associates, they can't go to India. There's specific people that aren't welcome. They're Black. There has been a Black Indian, or I should say a Black Dravidian dialogue for over 100 years. And it's very, very frightening to the Indians who identify basically as Aryans or almost like white people. And the people that they fear the most are Black Americans. Many of us don't know that the biggest riots that took place outside of Los Angeles after Rodney King occurred in India. People aren't aware there are riots all over India over Rodney King.
See,
people are not people are not aware. I got basically kicked out of the University of Virginia for wanting to do Black and Indian comparative studies. There's a policy they do not like. You'll rarely meet anyone Black doing research on India. It's just not. It doesn't happen much. It's not tolerated. Literally, I was told it wasn't academic to want to do a comparative. I mean, that literally happened to me.
What they did is that when I was going to school, they taught us that there was a Negro continuum. And that Negro continuum was from Africa to India and to Australia. But today they will teach you in the colleges and universities that Black people, African Americans, and that African Americans are really, in a sense, only related to the Congolese in West Africa.
That's right. That's right.
Then they'll teach you that the East Africans are different and the Indians are different.
That's right.
See, remember, Dr. Short has brought up a very important point, is that they don't want you to have that Black identity. You don't understand. When you're saying that you're a B1, that's a powerful statement. When you're saying you're a B1, that's connecting you with every Black person on the planet. And no matter, they can tell us that we're a minority, when in reality, we're not a minority. Let me tell you something. When you look at the 1860 Olympics, the 1860 census, if you look at the 1860 census, it only says that there were 4,000 Latinos in this country. 4,000 Latinos in this country. But today they're talking about they're in the millions. That's because they're all immigrants. And yet they have the nerve, in a sense, to say that they are the foundation of this country. How can they be the foundation of this country when it was only 4,000 of you in 1860? Go ahead. What's that about?
They're even making, I brought this out, they have a history where they were getting lynched more than we did.
And that's a lie. That's a lie.
Can I comment on something that you just said just briefly? I'm gonna say, my parents had always taught me ever since I was a kid that the dominant society never really taught about Black history. They never really explained Black history in the depths that it needs to be taught in. But I remember when I was younger, the school system used to be more honest about Black history than they are today. They used to mention that Black people were all over the world before, and now they're saying that Black people were only in the continent until the Europeans came to Africa and started moving Black people around. So I think this is very important. I think that was very important of what you said. It just reminded me of that.
And see, that's
you're lucky because that history that you got, believe it or not, that one of the adversaries of Dr. Winters who died, Dr. Frank Snowden, I think we're related. I'm sorry. I apologize for this high yellow self-hating Negro. His name is Frank. I'm sorry. I didn't do it, Doc. Frank Snowden and other people have this theory, which is based on a total lie, that Black people weren't seafarers.
Right.
Nobody Black ever sailed a ship. Only when white people began coming in the 14 and 1500s did Black people start getting into boats, and not as pilots, but as cargo. And this is a complete lie, because you have running down the east coast of Africa, you've got the Swahili states at like 3,000 miles of seafaring cities and towns, from Somalia to South Africa. And they're all sailing, and they're in Madagascar and trading, and even people in various parts. The Egyptians had boats, the Libyans had boats, the Phoenicians were not white people. So Carthage was a seaborne empire before there was a Rome, right? You had Black folks sailing all over the place, but this basically unravels their lie that they started everything. So if you can just make it so not one Black person ever thought about even getting on top of a log to get down the river until about 1500.
And it's very important to understand to see white people, they always try to teach you that our history is lookism. What they mean by lookism is that just because somebody looked Black, that's supposed to be a lie, and they weren't Black. You got to understand, in 1310 is recorded in the Arab literature that King Mansa, Abu Bakari of Male, he came to the United States. He came over to the Americas with 2,000 boats of men and 2,000 boats of supplies. Do you know how many people they could carry on a boat in ancient Male?
200.
A lot of people.
That's right, 100 to 200. So that meant that he brought over here over 20,000 Black people who settled throughout the New World. But they'll tell you about the Vikings, and the Vikings were Black too, but that's another story. They'll tell you the Vikings. They'll tell you all types of white people came over here, but they never admit that African people were over here, because they want you to lack any identity. That's why I spend every Thursday on the Reverend Shock Matthews show talking about Black history. And I've talked about these ships. Because Dr. Short is bringing up an important idea, is that when Snowden and others talked about, in a sense, that we didn't have boats, that we didn't sail, they meant that to make you think that we never wanted to be adventurous. We always wanted to be adventurous, and we were adventurous. And we took this knowledge and spread it throughout the world, throughout the universe, you see. But the point is this, is that people don't even stay, like on May 26th, 27th, I'm going to do a live broadcast on my channel, and I'm going to talk about the greatest the greatest aerial ace in history, and that was Ramses I. A lot of people don't even know that the Egyptians had airplanes. They had in a sense they had They had flying ships that went in outer space. They had submarines. And a lot of people don't even know this, and yet it's in the Egyptian text. And what they did is that the white man, he tried to cover it up. They put plaster over it, and it fell off. And when it fell off, it showed that they had airplanes, helicopters, all that type of good stuff. You're saying if they had airplanes and helicopters, why don't they have them today? They didn't need that. They only made that because they had to fight a certain man called Ravana. But after Ravana, they said, hell, we don't need that stuff. But see, we have such a rich history. But the whole point is this, is that we're always waiting for the European. We're waiting for the white man to tell us our history. And the white man isn't going to tell you your history. And we don't have people to research our history. You see? We don't have anybody to research history. That's why today, you have to go and read one of my books if you want to really read about our history. Because the fact is this, I explain. Runoko Rashidi, Ivan Van Sertima, they always talk about the black influence, but they can't tell you how they got there. They can't tell you what they did. All they do is show you pictures. They show you pictures because they couldn't do the research. And most of them were copying off of my research and didn't even tell the world. See? But karma catch up with you when you're a liar.
That's true. The real ones will stand the test of time.
Yeah, karma has a way of catching up with you.
And I sent you another link in your Gmail by a book that my mentor wrote the foreword. The Indian government is very afraid of the black movement in this country, to the extent that in India, they don't encourage DNA testing. And in fact, in India, they have said that Indian people are unique and are not of any African descent. There's no connection between anyone in India and all black people since the beginning of time.
Oh, wow.
Even that's how badly they want to be white, until the Chinese have acknowledged that they have African roots.
Yeah.
The Indian, you have to understand that the people who run India today identify with Adolf Hitler. They hate black people. Lynching happens more in India than any place in the world. They lynch people who are black Indians by the thousands annually.
And see,
it's just not discussed. And the thing, the guy who wrote the book, Rajshekar was denied. I did a program to commemorate the black struggle in India at Howard in 1997 or 98, one of the 2 years, 98. And the Indian government would not allow the author of that book you just shared to have a visa to come and talk to black Americans. I literally petitioned the Indian government. So, I'm on the bad list too, Dr. Winters, to try to get people who are Dalits to come, because our broadcast talking about caste was broadcasted all over India. And even when I was at the World Conference Against Racism in 2001, 22 years ago, the high caste, the Indians that identify as white, I heard two high-ranking people in their government complain about their fear of blacks and their untouchables, the Dalits, getting together. They were bitter. They were literally these two women and very, very expensive saris complaining about the blacks and the Indians sticking together. Are you understanding me?
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that we've got to do something to bust up what's going on between basically our pariah. Their word is pariah, but pariah is how we say it in English. In other words, we've got to keep our niggas from these niggas, or we're going to have a problem. Says, you know what we've got to do? And this is another thing we need to add to it, and I won't say anything else. We're going to get into this book. We need to remind them, we need to remind the blacks that we freed them. Gandhi is the liberator of black people. Gandhi is the one who freed them. We need to remind them. Whenever you see a black person in the Eastern religion, they're a coon. Gandhi hated black people's guts. Gandhi was a pedophile. Gandhi was bisexual. Gandhi was a racist. Gandhi was a monster. and Gandhi worshipped white people.
And see,
And hold on, I'm just going to say that Gandhi, proof that this new generation of kings, Bernice King is one of the biggest coons in history, and the King family in general, coons, that they've got a statue to Gandhi on the grounds of Ebenezer Church in Atlanta. And you'll find that the Indians who are racist are giving money to various Black people organizations to promote this idea that Gandhi is the savior and that Gandhi is the king of nonviolence and that the Black movement is based on Gandhi. And in reality, Gandhi was a person that participated in a genocidal war against Black people. And Gandhi even brought India to a point of having a genocide against Black Indians when the Black Indians were trying to just get representation in the future government of India. When Gandhi did that hunger fast that you heard about, that you really think is so wonderful, what Gandhi was saying is, if you niggas demand rights, I'm going to starve myself to death, and then the other people who are better armed will exterminate y'all. If you let me die trying to get your own independence and access to the economy, I'm going to get you all killed by just starving myself to death. You think Gandhi's nonviolent. To threaten a people who've been oppressed for thousands of years with extermination if they simply wanted enough food to eat, to have a right to say what goes on with their lives. And in fact, the person that runs India today, his name is Modi. Modi is an Indian Nazi. They hate Black people. And this is the reality. And so once you understand that these people, even Gandhi and them, all liked Hitler, and Hitler hated Black people. And so this is sort of why someone like Dr. Winters is a threat. People need to understand that even the Indian freedom movement came off of an Indian, Black Indian, coming and studying and living in Harlem, going to Abyssinia Church in New York, and took back what he was learning from Garvey's people and Black folks fighting for their rights in New York, took it to India. That's the basis of what they call affirmative discrimination. And in reality, what we call affirmative discrimination in America is affirmative action. The whole concept of affirmative action is an Indian witnessing segregation in America and looking at how he could challenge India's system of apartheid and segregation to bring up the Black people there that were held down. And you will not hear about this person. The Constitution of India, the main part of it that deals with justice, was written by an Indian who was Black, who was educated in part on the streets of New York by Black Americans. See, not Gandhi. Fuck Gandhi.
Yeah. And see, that's why I'm hated by the establishment. You got to remember is that the light skin or the so-called Aryan Indians, they didn't really rule in India until the British came. And
that's
the
right.
British, in a sense, because of the fact that they popularized the idea of Nazism, Aryanism, and Nazism, then that's why they hate me, because see, I've done a lot of research on history, genetics, and I've been able to show that the Tamil, the Dravidian people, that they really used to live in the Nile Valley, and that they migrated from the Nile Valley into India.
The Indus Valley.
This book right here. Let me read you what he says. He says,
Can you show the book again?
That's the same book. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And this is what he says. And in this book, he says this. It all began with Clyde Ahmed Winters, a guest editorial of September 16, 1985, African Origin of the Glorious Dalits, which opened the eyes of the entire African American population and brought us to their attention. The result, Runoko Rashidi came rushing to India. In other words, Runoko Rashidi, he was always riding off my back. But I'm the one that opened up this idea. But the point is this, I'm not trying to brag. What I'm just trying to say, because it's not good to brag, but what I'm saying is that people are teaching you a lie. They're teaching you a lie. Many Hebrews, many Moors, whenever they tell you not to love the word black, they're agents. They're agents of the government.
And
The
people
government don't
forget
want
that
you to see unity.
the Moors were funded by the Rockefellers and other people who hooked up. So that's a very interesting thing. And I want to go further. There's a man that died in 2019. His name was Darius Swan. The Swans were part of the Brown versus Board of Education case that, was settled in 1954, though it's never really been settled. You need to know that Dr. Darius Swan, went to India and they helped establish one of the Dalit Pride. So Black Pride in India was started by Black folk. Darius Swan, they created a magazine called Dalit Voice. So the Black American movement, in fact, I'll go one step further. We had this conversation in the space. It's called transnational blackness. Transnational blackness is the unity that Black people feel for each other. And when you take people who have a strong sense of their Black identity to a place where it's weaker, it empowers other people. So if you go to Oceania or the Pacific, you will meet people in New Caledonia. You will meet people in the Solomon Islands. You will meet people who got some of their mojo to struggle from the presence of Black soldiers who were in the Pacific in the Second World War, in particular the Solomon Islands, in particular West Papua. And East Papua. I mean, when you start thinking about the presence of Black men in uniform who knew who they were, who were warriors, they had an influence on the global revolution against being occupied, because many people do not know that there was a slave trade in the Pacific where even Blacks from the Pacific Islands were sold and merchandised, not too different from what was happening from the African continent. And, our guy, Dr. Horn down in Texas, has a very good book talking about the Pacific slave trade. So this idea of Blackness threatens Black pride, Black awareness, threatens. Even in South Africa, people need to remember Black awareness in South Africa has a lot to do with the presence of foundational Black Americans. Henry McNeil Turner of the AME Church, one of the few Black preachers I respect. These people went down there, and within a couple of years, the Zulus were ready to try to kick the white people out. And by the way, Gandhi was down there trying to kill the same Zulus that Henry McNeil Turner and others were inspiring to stand up and fight for their property, for their land, for their space in Azania.
But we ended. It was foundational Black Americans that ended apartheid. You know how we ended it? I was a teacher. I taught in Chicago public schools for 46 years. And the point is this, is that we demanded our pension monies. We demanded our pension monies to be withdrawn from any company that associated with South Africa. Mm-hmm. And because of the fact that many of us in the union movement took our money out of was threatening to take our money out, that's what made the South Africans have to give the Afrikaners give South Africans their freedom. We freed South Africa.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And something else, we need to give credit to Black folk in the city of New York who literally purchased surface-to-air missiles for Robert Mugabe to shoot down the white planes in Zimbabwe. There was gridlock from the 1960s until these people started using surface-to-air missiles, blowing up people's airplanes. Zimbabwe is a landlocked country that had sanctions. So, when you have sanctions, the only way you could get stuff in is if you could fly it in from South Africa. Once those Black Zimbabweans were able to get missiles where they could shoot the jets and the commercial airliners out of the sky, Zimbabwe, they went to Lancaster House. And it was a fucked up deal, but at least I guess it was better than what they had before. So this is what this blackness does. So I'm talking about black church folk raising money for missiles. Imagine what we could do if we liked ourselves here. That's why they're starving us credit. Now, we need to get into this book because I know folk want to hear the book. Do they want to hear the book, Brother Afro Elite?
I think they want to hear the book, brother.
Okay, we're sorry. It's so
they've been loving the conversation so far. We got a room full of people, so I don't think anybody is disconnected at all.
We just want people to understand that we're important. Part of the lie of the system is that we're nobody. We've never done anything, and everything's been done by white folks. And if they've done everything, then they're the ones that have spread AIDS, syphilis, gonorrhea, war, global pollution. Take that shit too, since you did everything.
That's true. They always put the negative on us, and then they take the positive.
Yeah, well, that's like blaming the guy in the mailroom for what the CEOs do upstairs. Now, I'm in chapter 8 of Rebellion and Revolution. Are you guys with me? Yeah, and we want you guys to write questions down. If you've got questions, we're going to treat you like you're white and try to answer them.
Yeah, but so for the audience, if y'all have any questions, y'all just put them in the chat room.
And I'm going to try to do a section, and then we'll ask. So, and I may skip, but let me see. This is chapter 8. Rebellion and Revolution. For the first time since the 1930s, Americans of more than ordinary social insight are openly discussing the possibility of social revolution in the United States. We know that during the 1930s, revolution implied the overthrow of capitalistic institutions, a real threat, which the more enlightened wing of the American bourgeois wealth successfully defeated by the implementation of the various New Deal policies. But unlike the 1930s, when it was reported that some of the idle rich were so fearful of revolution that they had their yachts ready in the harbor for a fast getaway just in case, the talk of revolution today has little to do with conflicts in the labor-capital relations or the imminent collapse of the capitalist system. It has to do with the present state of American race relations, which some people hopefully or fearfully describe as a Negro revolution. There's no need to mention the obvious that the racial crisis reflects a broad and profound discontent within the American Negro minority. However, when one goes as far as to say this racial discontent contains seeds of social revolution in America, this immediately calls up a flock of other questions concerning the present outlook of the American state of mind, which, when considered side by side with the possibility of a Negro revolution, has a very sobering, if not disturbing, effect on such speculations. Without a doubt, it must have been the influence of such considerations which prompted President Kennedy, by the way, his nephew declared he's running for president today, President Kennedy to counsel some time ago, apropos of the racial question, that the revolution be a peaceful one. Considering the social and historical political background of the 20th century revolutions thus far, the talk about a Negro revolution also demands that all segments of the Negro movement in America be examined very closely. And doing so, we will note that none of the leadership core of any segments, be it the NAACP, King, Corps, Students, Urban League, Muslims, etc., is anti-capitalist. The same can generally be said for the followers of these leadership factions. If the Negro movement then is revolutionary, it must be revolutionary in the sense which is uniquely different from the characteristics and aims of all other revolutions of our century.
Will you take speculation.
Yes.
Will you take a minute and explain that to the people?
Okay.
Explain that to the people, please.
What he's saying is, and every other so-called revolution around the world at that point was against 1% of the people, the capitalist class, screwing over either people in colonies or within a respective country of itself, that the people that had movements were saying, all of us are going to get paid or none of us get paid because we're going to shake this thing up. And what he's saying is that this so-called Black revolution isn't talking about everybody getting paid. The other thing is that if you're really having a revolution, how can the person who's holding you down tell you how you're going to fight? If he's defining the rules of the fight, then you basically are, you've already lost.
And not only that, but see, when you can continue in a minute, but this also explains why, if you notice, that's why the leader of the NAACP in San Francisco Amos,
you can say it like that, Amos Brown.
Amos Brown, whatever his name is.
Well, no, it can be like Amos Brown.
That's why he came out against, in a sense, reparations. He came out against reparations because, as he said, everything he wanted you to do is to make money for the 1%. He wanted you to make money for white people. He don't want you to be independent. Could you continue, Dr. Short?
And the NAACP in California got $50 million from racist-ass Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from Black people via subprime loans.
That's right.
And so, and understand, these banks may take all of our money. So they've already paid a bribe to the NAACP to say nothing if they steal your deposits. If you don't hear a goddamn peep from any of these Black organizations, they got paid before they even took our money.
Right.
Next paragraph. Speculations about the Negro Revolution have inspired the usual suspicions that the integration movement is communist inspired. In answers to such charges, one could point to the very conservative and loyal pro-capitalist sentiment of the Negro leadership.
I think your phone is ringing because we can't hear you.
Someone's calling me. Niggas call, okay? All right. The very loyal pro-capitalist sentiments of Negro leadership. But still, this would not explain very much about the Negro Revolution. We know very well that the communists and other Marxist factions, such as the Trotskyites, independent socialists, etc., are very much in support of the Negro movement in one way or another. One only has to read the Marxist-oriented press to see this. The truth is, however, that the Marxist factions are trailing eagerly behind the Negro movement in search of issues for their programs. The Marxists are no longer able, as they once were, to initiate any movements among Negroes. Moreover, what is not generally understood by those who raise the issue of communism is that the integration movement by its very nature has rendered the Marxist movement superfluous and irrelevant, since the Marxists qua Marxists are not needed in the integration struggle. The character of the integration struggle cuts the ground from under the Marxist Party, since they cannot beat the NAACP or CORE at their own game, nor can Marxist theories about revolution cope with the Negro movement that is pro-capitalist. To the extent of demanding no more than an equitable share of the abundance of capitalist democracy, yet people express the feeling that there is a revolution in the air. There is a tenseness abounding as reports of racial strife become more and more a common occurrence. Instinctively, we sense that America is preparing itself for a great social change of some kind, and the idea of a revolution is the first that comes to mind. But to conjure up the idea of a Negro revolution under the present conditions in America also calls for a definition or redefinition of what one means when one says revolution or revolutionary, because in highly industrialized America, it is not possible to use such terms as freely as one could and describing social conditions in, let us say, Latin America and still make sense. People who use the term Negro Revolution loosely are unwittingly adding fuel to the flames of racial crisis, which can lead to more racial chaos instead of racial solutions, because such people were not helping to explain exactly what the Negro is up against in his struggle to win racial equality in America. Winning racial equality in America could very well require revolutionary methods, and very probably will. But then we will have to understand why revolution and how the Negro could possibly make one. The why and the how are important considerations because a racial crisis does lay down an indirect challenge to the American capitalist status quo, while the Negro leadership at the very same time seeks integration into the status quo with no professed desire to alter it. Let me stop there and say, our sellout leaders are basically saying, just let us in the back door and we'll keep these Negroes down for you. Sort of like that fat, greasy preacher, Reverend Barbecue, the one that was in Tennessee. The dude is so fat, they had to remove a couple of pews so he could get down. I mean, it's disgusting. We are the leaders that they pick for us are traitors. Yeah. And they only want a payoff. They want crumbs to keep us down. That's the boule. That's, forgive me, I'm a Christian, but damn, these nigger preachers, we are being betrayed. People are saying that they want to lead us forward, but they're really asking for a bribe from the people that screw us. This is what he is saying it.
And not only that, but this allows you to understand why we have people like Justin Pearson. Today they're trying to promote Justin Pearson as a leader because he wears a dashiki.
But wait a minute, but have you looked at him? He's nothing but he's imitating Marlon Wayans from In Living Color.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, it's absolutely outrageous that people can't see that. I mean, y'all get a goddamn video cop watching Living Color. Even the clothes he has, he looks just like the character, the crooked nigger preacher that Marlon Wayans would play in Living Color. Some of y'all are too young to remember. And then the other guy, I looked at him, I knew from his bone structure that he's Asian black mix. And I think he's probably had a black father abandon him. And so you meet these kids who are half-breeds who hate their black father. This kid, he's a wreck. I mean, he looks like he's on something. He looks like he's taking psychotropics. Look at his dilated pupils. Something's wrong with him. And then that big fat white woman that looked like Skipper from Gilligan's Island with a Barbarella wig on. I mean, what the hell? And then you saw the dude with the tight pink suit on, constantly touching the dude like they couldn't wait to have an orgy after they bamboozled us, and they're thinking that we've got some leadership. Yeah. I mean, you had a stud up there. She was harder than a jackhammer. I mean, I probably need like goggles on to be able to look at that broad.
Get the goggles. Get the goggles.
I mean, just really. So it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And sometimes I like racists because they don't want them in the chamber because they're black. I don't want them in the chamber because they're coons.
Coons.
Some people hate Obama because he's black. I despise Obama because he's Antichrist.
And see, and this is what makes it so bad is that here's a guy pretending that he's on Living Colors, and some of these African Americans, and that's what I call them. African Americans, because they're not foundational Black Americans. These African Americans, they believe that stuff. They want to see an image. And see, that's what Harold Cruz tried to teach us. You can't go into sloganisms. You can't go into trying to make false imagery. It's fake. It's fake. Just like a lot of fake Afrocentrists. They're fake.
Yes.
They just pretend. And when you really see what they're doing behind the scenes, you would have
they're selling us out. In fact, I'm thinking about Black Yororo. If you ever go and follow them, whenever they have a march, they have huge numbers of biracial babies. So these people talk Black Revolution. They've dropped more pipe in white women than a whole bunch of white frat parties that have enough beer to float Germany. I'm just telling you. So check it out. Now let's go back to reading.
Stop
Stop
telling the truth.
All right.
The truth will set you free.
Okay, so they have so the Black leadership is not really demanding real change. Amos Brown doesn't want change. Okay, the Congressional Black Circus doesn't want change. They just want their piece of the pie while the rest of us die. I like that. Repeat that. They just want their piece of the pie while the rest of us die. Okay, this creates for the Negro movement a highly contradictory situation which is also a dangerous one. It is dangerous because Americans, of all people in the world today, are the least amenable to, adaptable to, or desirous of any far-reaching changes in their social structures. Let me just stop. He's saying when Negroes are playing around like they're trying to do something with these reactionary white folk that will shoot you for ringing their doorbell, what kind of change you think they for? And if you make people that hostile to any kind of change, you're talking about a revolution, you're going to encourage the wrath of millions of armed people who've been trained to hate your guts since they drank white milk out the bottle. Okay. It is also dangerous because Negro leadership has been instrumental in creating a situation which has implications far beyond its limited range of programs. Translation: these niggas are writing checks for social change that their asses can't cash. They're talking about stuff that they can't deliver and don't want to deliver. However, the same way that white folks feel that this Black Lives Matter stuff is really a black revolutionary movement to take down America, they would shoot all of us in the head over a group we don't even have anything to do with, because what they know is that they hate change and they hate us. And these black leaders, they're the kind that already have a country home in the Bahamas or someplace. They'll let us all die. They'll write memoirs somewhere. Pretend to be a government in exile to get paid from the UN or something. Okay. It does not measure up to the demands of the racial crisis, so we don't have good leadership. A crisis which developed because the Negro movement has now transcended the moderate limits established by its leadership. I'll translate one more time. What was going on in this country in the late 60s was there was a potential for radical change in the hearts of some black people who wanted more than to eat a hamburger next to a Klansman. And that's what these people gave us. And wow, I'm in a bathroom stall, and a white guy, he and I both taking a dump. This is like walking on the moon. Wow, I'm shitting next to a white person. And this is what our leadership offered us. I'm not against shitting next to a white person, but I mean, hell, we needed more. So there was expectations of people of Dr. Winter's age that we're really going to get something. We could really get something if we wanted it. So they set up the young black people and other people who wanted change and hung them out to dry to face COINTELPRO, the drugs, the killer cops, mass incarceration, feminism, the gay movement, that all of these things to check us were unleashed. And they didn't have a contingency plan. They didn't even have an umbrella, and they had us in a shitstorm.
But they didn't want a contingency plan.
They didn't exactly.
And
they wanted
would save them, and they wanted.
Yeah.
See, the whole idea was that if they could just be around white people, they would be so happy. But it proved to be a disaster because when we, in a sense, were integrated, we began to lose our economic base. It was a primitive economic base. Sure, it wasn't that many businesses, but it was an economic base, and we lost that.
Well, let me say this to you. I want to challenge you on that because it was much. Because there is an article in Forbes magazine from the middle 1950s, and it was called the $15 billion economy of Negro America, which meant they were looking with envy. They understood it would grow. The civil rights movement for white businesses was a hijacking of the black economy. It's the same way blacks don't have a lot of hospitals, but all over the country, hospitals that have served blacks have been shut down. So those black people would have to give their dollars to white hospitals, their insurance money to subsidize, because the white demographic population has been shrinking for some time. They're trying to figure out, white folks are like this. Let me just say this and we'll go back to reading. White folk are like my big brother Steve. My big brother Steve, his nickname for me was Bully. And my big brother was so greedy. Whenever we would eat, he would almost get sick when we were young because he tried to eat all of his food. And part of what he'd be choking food down, but part of what he was doing was looking at my plate. He wouldn't even though he had way more food than I had, I didn't eat that much. He was concentrated on even taking the little bit of food that I had, even though he had a plate full of food. And this is how greedy and out of control these people are who came from resource poor, food poor Europe. Just look at how the war in Ukraine has made Europe lose its mind. A 1-year war. They've had wars in Africa since the 50s. And these people in Europe have 1 year of war, and they're fighting and missing meals. They're always trying to take other people's stuff, because if you really understand their concept of economics is piracy. It's taking what the other person has. They don't develop, in particular the seaborne European empires, don't really develop. They create a parasitic situation where they can take perpetually from other people to subsidize their resource poor metropolitan areas. I'm just saying this to you. Once you recognize that Black people who overpay for everything in the cities subsidize the economy, while we get told we're worthless, when they built the suburbs and all these other kinds of things off of taxes that we paid into, and we got none out of it. We're the profit in the society. That's the profit. That's something that they didn't have to do anything, like slave labor. I didn't have to even feed it. I could just take from it. So even if it wasn't that big, it's something that they didn't have. And if you're into a mindset of a zero-sum game where everything is yours, they even think that the urine in your kidney, they've got some use for it if they could get it out of you.
Yeah.
That's the way that they relate everything. Think about the Germans taking the hair off the Jews, taking the rings, taking the teeth. I mean, what other group of people stripped down like that? I mean, people's teeth, people's hair, people's toenails, making stuff out of people's bones. I mean, you're the Third Reich, the greatest people in the world. You worried about people's hair?
And see, but
There's
people,
never been a great civilization that was as chinchy, greedy, and acquisitive. I mean, just
and not
okay.
only
Go
that,
ahead, Doc.
not only that, but see, what they've done is that they made us, and we continue. We came over here as a commodity, and they continue to see us as a commodity. You see, in fact, they don't look at
Organ
us as human
harvesting,
beings.
blood banking. Yes, sir.
That's right. They look at us as an asset. You know what an asset is? That's something you can depend on to make you money. And that's what they see us as Dr. Schwartz was talking about, is that they use us. It's our economic wherewithal. It's the fact that we spend money. It's the fact that we buy merchandise. It's the fact, in the sense, that we buy the latest things that allow this economy to flow. This economy, this total economy, you may not believe it, but this total economy is dependent upon the foundational Black Americans, because we spend money. They try to save money. We spend money.
And when they shut this economy down, and folk couldn't go out and give their money to people that hate us, the whole economy almost collapsed. They had to open it back up, disease or not. Let these niggas give us their money, or else we won't have a country.
Yeah.
Let me get on. Let me go on. Okay. Listen to this. The Negro movement represents an indirect challenge.
Dr. Short, what chapter are you on?
I said 8. Okay. I'm on page 100.
Okay, because I've been looking for the PDF to the whole book. So what I did is I actually rented it from Google Books, so I can kind of display it.
I thought I sent it to you.
Not the whole book. It was.
I did send the whole book. I have the whole book. If you want, I know I sent everybody the whole book. Anyone that asked me.
Yeah.
If I think nobody told me that they didn't get the whole book. Do you want me to send that to you?
It's fine.
Okay.
Because I have it.
Okay. Now always tell me.
Got it.
I would never give you half. I'm not a Bush bitch. I'm either gonna give you the whole thing, or I wouldn't have even brought it up. Anyway. So you're on page 100?
I'm getting to it now. Let me pull this up. Hold on.
The Negro.
But you can continue.
I can continue. Okay. Listen to this. The Negro movement represents an indirect challenge to the capitalist status quo, not because it's programmatically anti-capitalist, but because full integration of the Negro and all levels of American society is not possible within the present framework of the American system. If this sounds categorically absolute, one can only say that the time has come for a blunt appraisal of reality. The United States cannot and never will solve the race problem unless Americans change the economic, political, cultural, and administrative social organization of this country in various sectors. Any super optimism concerning the race question based on a lesser assessment or hope for a neoliberalistic American revival is heartening, but hardly realistic. Is this the same thing as saying that in order to solve the racial crisis, what is needed is a revolution? Again, the question is, what do we mean by revolution? Social change in any society can be either revolutionary or evolutionary, depending on what organizational methods are pursued and who directs the organizational methods. In the United States, the capitalist system, in all of its major and minor levels of economic administration, is owned, controlled, and directed by whites of various classes. Even white labor of the trade union type can be said to have a stake in white ownership of capital, either by racial identification with the unions or with the bureaucracy, with a capitalist mentality to match its capitalist investments. Racial discrimination growing out of the racist ideology of the dominant whites of the capital labor alliance in America has traditionally excluded Negroes, both bourgeois and working class, from equal participation in either the industrial trade fields or administration in the capital labor alliance. Hence, if the Negro movement is revolutionary or has revolutionary potential, how can the Negro movement have the power in and of itself to enforce structural and administrative changes in this capital labor combination in order to make room for the democratic participation of the Negro as an American equal? Essentially, this is what is implied in the word integration as projected by the Negro bourgeoisie, or at least that portion of the Black bourgeoisie that supports integration. But since the integration program does not demand alterations in the structural forms of American society, since the white labor capital alliance does not desire such changes and would further submit their alliance to block such changes, and since the Negro movement must have such changes in order to achieve its aims, where does this leave the Negro movement? From this analysis, which admittedly is oversimplified for the purpose of illustration, we have to conclude that the Negro movement at this moment is not a revolutionary movement because it has no present means or program to alter the structural forms of American institutions. It is pure political romanticism at this point to call the Negro movement a Negro revolution. It is more properly called the Negro rebellion against the American racial status quo. There is a great difference between a rebellion and revolution, two conceptions which some people insist on confusing. This confusion is what led, for example, to the outcome situation in Monroe, North Carolina, involving Robert Williams. The book for him is Negroes with Guns. Negroes with Guns. Look up Robert Williams, a
Now,
Black power leader.
What page are you on now? Because I just was.
I'm on 101.
Okay. This is 100 to 101. I think. All right. So we're on the same page.
Okay. I can keep reading?
Yeah, go ahead.
The American Marxists.
Let me highlight where you are so they can read along if they want to do that.
And is everybody okay? Are y'all enjoying this? Are y'all seeing how heavy this dude was?
If you guys are enjoying this, can you put a black fist up in the chat room? Let's let Dr. Short and Dr. Winters know how much we appreciate them and appreciate their time. So if you're enjoying this, can you put a black fist up in the chat room?
And I'll quickly just say Robert Williams was a Black NAACP chapter leader down in Monroe, North Carolina, who organized a private army of Black self-defense. And ultimately, he was set up. They tried to say that he kidnapped some white people and he had to flee to Cuba. and later to Tanzania. And ultimately, he was fled to China. And speaking of Black influence, the United States refused to recognize the existence of the People's Republic of China until the Chinese handed Robert Williams over to them as a prisoner. Can you believe that? The United States hates Black people so much, they won't acknowledge 900 million Asians because they're mad at one Black American. Has it happened before? Well, of course, Dr. Short will tell you. Exactly 80 years ago, the United States only began to recognize what was then called the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, Yusuf Dugashvili, agreed to not make movies talking about American racism and to force Black people who had gone to Russia to be communists, that they had to go back to America. And only when they said, we're going to throw out all our Black people, then the United States embraced the Soviet Union, but you have to give us our Black people. And right at this moment, the United States doesn't recognize Cuba fully because Cuba has Black people, Black power people like Assata Shakur, godmother to Tupac Shakur, people who have fled to Cuba. The United States is punishing all of Cuba in part because a few Black people that stood up here fled there. They're starving 12 million people. That's how much they hate us.
And not
Again, process that.
Not only just how much they hate us, it's the power. It's the power that we have. See, anything that we do, we ignite the whole world. The whole world imitates foundational Black Americans. And see, that's what Dr. Short is trying to make you become aware of, is that everybody is waiting for us. But what we say matters. Because the fact is this, is that nobody on the planet Earth can understand how people who have been subjected to the greatest harm that you can't even imagine can still have the determination and the strength to stand up to the major power in the world. In fact, until this past year, the only people, I'm talking about Russia and China, the only people who stood up against white supremacy and American hegemony was foundational Black Americans. That's why they fear us and hate us.
So again, Black people, that the United States also threatened to cut off diplomatic relations with Tanzania for offering Black people an opportunity to flee America to go there. Remember that in the 60s? And they said you can't have any, none of our people can go there. We'll get you if you let any more of our people come. Yeah, I need to understand this thing is deep, how people feel about us. You can't, I always say this to Blacks from the Caribbean and Africa. You can actually leave Ghana or Nigeria or Congo or Somalia. You can leave. And that government, if you're not really trying to do any revolutionary stuff, they'll leave you alone. We're the only people where the people, anywhere in the world, they don't want us doing anything. Just don't, they don't want you here and they don't want you to leave.
Ironic,
and that's,
isn't it?
Huh?
It's ironic.
Yeah, so it's an obsessive power relationship that we have to confront. And same way they hate Black Lives Matter, but they blame us for it. We don't participate, and they still think we're doing it. Even when you see mobs of white people marching, destroying stuff, they're screaming about Black people, and you don't even see any Black people doing anything. It's a sickness. This is what he's making. He's making reference to, that these people are so united in their hatred of us, and even the white folks that are broke identify with the rich white people that rob them as long as they're anti-Black. How do you just get some kind of revolution and you don't have a real plan? This is what he's saying, guys. Can I read on?
No, are there any questions?
Yes.
Are there any questions yet?
Yeah, the chat room, if you guys have any questions, I haven't seen any yet, but if you guys have any questions, you guys can put that in the chat room. And I will say before you continue Dr. Short, if you can tell me the exact paragraph that you're on.
I'm on the second paragraph of 101.
Okay, this is 100 to 101. I think this is 101. I don't really use this form of ebooks like that, so but this is where you are, Dr. Short.
Wherever it says there is a great difference between rebellion and revolution, the first word in the new paragraph should be there.
Okay. Go down a little bit.
You said
go down.
Oh yeah, there. What? There. Yeah, go back. There.
Right.
Wait, no, it says no. This. No.
It's a little bit up. It's a little bit further up.
Okay. Now we're okay. Hold on. Yeah, I went too far. I can just search it up, I think, right?
Right.
Okay, you can continue. You can continue. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
There is a what would you say?
You should say there is a great difference. I'll start again at this. There's a great difference between rebellion and revolution.
I found it. Here we go. We're right here, y'all.
Okay.
Right here.
And I got down to Robert Williams. Listen to this.
So he's right here.
And here he says is American Marxists of certain tendencies and Marxists are incurable romantics. The Marxists are looking for a revolution against the capitalist system. They're going to make stuff. It's sort of like people making a fat girl into her being pretty, or making a drag queen into a leading man in a movie, in a romance movie. It's impossible. But anyway, he's talking about the Marxists. So these are the white, liberal, Jew, Anglo types.
Dr. Sure, we have a question in the chat room if you want to answer that or you want to.
Let me finish this paragraph, but just hold it for 1 second.
All right.
The American Marxists of certain tendencies, Marxists are incurable romantics, tried to make a revolutionary out of Robert Williams, who was not a revolutionary but a rebel. The Monroe Movement was a small local manifestation of the growing Negro rebellion, which some Marxists mistook for the revolution in the making. One can say that the final outcome of the adventurous happenings in Monroe was unavoidable due to the tense racial situation in America. Nonetheless, this does not excuse the incorrect and superficial assessment applied to the Negro movement in whole or in part. A rebellion is not a revolutionary movement unless it changes the structural arrangement of the society or is else able to project programmatic ideas towards that end. I'm going to finish this paragraph. The Negro movement does not have the latter. In America, neither arms nor demonstrations nor protest marches mean very much without such ideas. In other words, without a revolutionary philosophy for change, to be on code, nothing matters. The Negroes run around with their guns, the folks are the Marxists, Black Lives Matter, sexuality, coons, Moors, whatever. It means nothing if you don't have a code.
I fully agree.
The question that follows is, if indeed a revolution is required to achieve Negro aspirations of whatever class stratification in America, how is it possible to change the Negro movement from a rebellion into a revolutionary movement? Again, this is predicated on whether or not social changes to come to America will be revolutionary or evolutionary. This has not yet been determined. It is a dialectical question. However, prior to making any rash or, let us say, unscientific predictions, let us get a clear conception of the American capitalistic status quo and the American Negro's relationship to the status quo. I'm ready for the question.
Okay. That's good, because I think that. All right. The question comes from our sister Deborah Ann, and she asks, can the president grant reparations with an executive order?
he can certainly try. Obama gave Jews over $15 million in 2015, Jews who were persecuted over in Europe. He just gave it to them. So there are things the president can do. The issue is would the president do it? And I think it could happen, but you'd have to demand it. And Frederick Douglass said that part of power is being able to make a demand. We don't demand, we beg. And as a woman, you know, a lot of Black men in particular is a good example of powerlessness. When you see a Black man begging for love, it's really pathetic. You prefer a man that's got some integrity, that has class in how he approaches you. If he's begging all the time, even if you like it, it'll make you angry. You want to withhold it to punish him for not having any dignity.
That's right.
White people, or the white folks who are withholding things, do not respect beggars. African heads of state are beggars. That's why they're pushing the LGBTQ stuff down their throats, because they're beggars. Agriculturally rich countries begging for food aid. Okay, when you're a beggar, you give a beggar a penny with a hole in it, or a white cop who gave these Black beggars a shit sandwich. No one respects a beggar. Jewish people demanded money for something that didn't even happen here.
Right.
They gave it to them. We have to demand it. We can too take it. Look at these illegals. They have more rights than we do in this country unlawfully. They demand it.
Yeah. Look at, they're even giving them free education in New York City.
Free everything. They've given them the right to vote giving them the right to vote without even being here 30 days. Everything. I remember college students that went to Howard had to fight sometimes to be able to vote because they live somewhere else. And yet these people just show up. Do you know if you're from North Korea and you live in DC, you can get the right to vote. Russia, China, anybody can vote here. And by the way, this is handed to them in part by weak, sorry, utopian Negroes. And I'm going to go somewhere. Gay people, they demand stuff. They're demanding that you call a man a woman. They're demanding that you legislate a rectum into a vagina. They demand. It's just stuff that can't even be done that they demand and they get. And things that we could get, we don't. We don't demand. In fact, I'll tell you, most Blacks are in politics to screw us or to get rich and fake like they represent us. The same way I always say as a preacher's kid, most nigger preachers are there to get rich, not to save souls or fight for the people. Forgive me, I really don't like preachers. The preacher just feel like, I feel like I'm a mass shooter because I hear them talk for 1 minute and just turn me off because they won't teach people the gospel. They won't feed the poor. They won't speak up. I don't even go to church on Sunday. I refuse. Sabbath, I will never go to church on Sunday, not on a regular basis. And in fact, go to the bathroom and have a number 2 when they're doing the offertory. That's a cultural boycott. Okay, can I go to the next paragraph?
Yes. Yeah. We have a couple more questions. Do you want to do like a paragraph question? Like, how do you want to set that up?
Well, no, I think let me read for a few, and because let me see how much more to this. This isn't that long a chapter. Let me see. This chapter we've got about 23 pages to cover. Let me do about 2 or 3. So people should write their questions out and we'll do it. I just want you to get a flavor for this, for people to understand what this Cruz dude is. He's saying everything that we see now, the crooked leadership that doesn't stand up, everything that you're mad about, this isn't new. We've been in gridlock for about 60 years as a people. And we're going to stay in gridlock as long as we have Black traitor leaders, all types, cultural ones, these no good, pathological, toxic, weaponized celebrities like that Lizzo, who should be a dirigible, for pork bellies, It's absolutely outrageous. We can stop this, but we've got to understand we have an opportunity to be on code. for reparations, for justice, for what we need. And we do have that. We need to work with it. So let me read a couple of pages, and then we take some questions. But
Okay.
I'll answer this before I go into this paragraph. What's the next one?
The next question.
The question the person had. Did they have it? Is it up?
Yeah, it's up. It's available. So to answer Sister Deborah's question, it's not the Dawes plan. Obama did that on his own. It wasn't a part of Germany. But D. Foster asks, is it possible to get a certified black president? And when he says certified, what he means is pretty much.
I know what he means.
Okay.
For me, forgive me, I don't give a damn about symbols or status. Okay. Even that's not really the issue. Under the present system that Mr. Cruz is laying out, no, you can't get it without things changing substantive. I mean, just across the board. And so why would we even want a black president? I would rather control who the president is. This is something going back to these black folk here, the Negro Convention movement, where black folks in the 1800s were funding white people to do their bidding. You hear about William Lloyd Garrison, the abolitionist, but you don't recognize that black people were funding this white dude to raise hell with white people. Am I right, Dr. Winters? Black folk were paying white people to fight white people for them. And white people were more respectful of a white person fighting them than a black person. Jewish people put a Christian out when they want to push something. They never make it out because they're a hated group. They never put one of their own out, because the way that ethnic politics works is that people will coalesce. Everybody's united against us. So it's stupid to try to put a black person in a political place where you have to cooperate with everybody and form coalitions when everybody's against you. It's who cares? What would make more sense is if we were powerful enough to make people do what we want, whether they were certifiably black or not. Black folks could have made Obama do what they wanted. We refused to hold that faggot accountable. Faggot is what I call them. We would not, or Manshell, the studies with, we still refuse to demand anything. We get enamored of, it's sort of like niggas in church. You can see that this dude's a pedophile. Look at all that, the youth division in the church, and the guys drooling, looking at kids, and everybody says, oh, he's so spiritual. He's so close to God. Whenever anybody black accomplishes something that we think is significant, we worship these people like African praise singers. You shouldn't worship anybody except the Most High God. Everybody else has to wipe their ass. At least I hope they do. And I use wipes because toilet paper doesn't get all the shit I want moved. So I wipe it, and I use a wipe app because I don't trust it. Toilet paper leaves shit behind. Everybody's human. Nobody's greater than any one of us. If we were unified, we don't need to go through the whole problem of putting certain people in office if we control people. We had an effective black congressman named Adam Clayton Powell, who worked with the janitors and the other people. He knew who the gays were. He knew who the pedophiles were. Every legislation, everything he wanted, he always got. Because he could tell someone, your mother down in Alabama, she's screwing her chauffeur. I'm going to do a news report. Okay, Mr. Powell, you got my vote. Look, I live in D.C. You want real power like Epstein has? Blackmail people. I'd like the dirt. I'd like to know who's having sex with kids and animals, who's got kiddie porn on their hard drive. I could get any legislation I want it done. We don't even need to run anybody. We got some black folks who know how to hack computers. We should be in everybody's computer and find out. In fact, trick them. Create a fake website and see if you could get one of these politicians to try to come on to a kid and get that and load that and put that out on social media. We should destroy or control people, even if we don't have our person there. It's an inferiority complex for black folks that they've got to see a person that looks like them in a position, or they don't feel like they're covered. Take the city of Newark. They got more shit from the Italian. Remember Rodino? Rodino did more for blacks in Newark than a drunk-ass Donald Payne or his strange-ass son. The Italian, who came out of the racist Italian ethnic Democratic Party thing in Newark, was more responsive to black people than the black people were. So you can get a black person there, even certifiably black. Maxine Waters is certifiably black, and always except for black doesn't crack. She's more cracked than a San Andreas fault. Okay. I mean, and God, I mean, please, Maxine, tighten that shit up. You in Hollywood, you can afford it. Maxine Waters is certifiably black, and she works for Latinos and the Mexican mafia. So we have lots of certifiably black folks who get into position, and they go into this system that's structured to make you be a coon. Okay. It's the same way I could have gone into the ministry, got paid 6 figures, but I would have had to have done gay marriages and talk about people of color and shit. I'd rather stay with mom in the basement. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to marry 2 dudes. I'm not going to marry 2 women. I'm against people having sex with kids. There's no amount of money you can pay me. We don't need to necessarily be there to be in control. Adam Clayton Powell never became senator. He was so powerful. He's the only member of Congress in the last almost 60 years that got removed from Congress because he had so much dirt on the white folks that they had to do something to get rid of him. Make him go. People saw that show, The Godfather of Harlem. Adam Clayton Powell was far more creative than that show. Adam Clayton Powell had folk trying to commit suicide up there. It was one black person in Congress out of 435 people driving everybody white crazy. Now we have close to 60. And we've got even some of them certifiably black, and we're more fucked up now than we were in the 60s. Right. So don't tell me about black folks sitting in seats. I don't give a damn. Control them. Find out who's a pedophile, who snorts coke, who's a porn freak, who beats their wife. I live here in D.C. You want to know how the Israelis, how the Jews run stuff? They have everybody's business. Black folks used to be smart until we believed in one party or the other. It used to be that black folks would take the trash out of the cans and take it to other people, politically black, so you could know who did what. That's how this family out of Baltimore, you know who I'm talking about, Perrin Mitchell, Clarence Mitchell, a black man that never got elected to the Senate. This dude had so much dirt and so much clout until they basically called him the 101st senator, and he never got elected. You know who I'm talking about, Winters. And this dude had everybody's business. They knew who went to whorehouses. They were just giving people laws. They didn't give the laws in the 60s because their consciences were pricked or that they cared. These black folks like Perrin Mitchell's family member, Clarence Mitchell Sr., and Adam Clayton Powell knew how to blackmail. They knew how to use stuff to intimidate people. They knew that somebody was screwing the pages the same way I knew the Speaker of the House in 2005 was screwing the kids. I didn't have anybody to go to. This guy, Dennis Hastert, that got convicted in your city of Chicago, Afro elite. Mm-hmm. I saw this man romancing a little boy in front of me, Cinco de Mayo in 2005. If I could have found black folks that knew how to leverage power, Mr. Hastert that was behind all these anti-black legislative efforts, we could have checkmated his faggot ass. But everybody's trying to get someone in the seat. If we could just get a black president, Obama had been, well, we got to wait. We're going to get our man in there. Bullshit. You've never had a Jewish president other than Obama, and y'all don't know he's part Jewish. Jewish people don't need anybody that looks like them because they control them. What the hell difference does it make if you're in control? This is why rich people set up foundations. They don't have to own the money. They control it. When you control it, you don't pay taxes on it. Our stupid asses try to own everything. Stupid ass Jay-Z and these people are billionaires today. They'll be broke tomorrow if they don't know what to do with their money. What you do is you control. And white folks are the masters of control. Negroes want to be celebrities. Negroes need to be seen. We're so tired of being black, ugly, and hated. We want everybody to recognize us. Whether it's Billy Porter, Little Nas X, Lizzo, we have this obsessive need to be loved by people who hate our guts. We have a love-hate relationship with white people. We hate them because they don't love us. And we hate one another because we do love one another. With some sick fucks. To hell with the black president. Control the whole Congress. Find out who has AIDS, who's in Congress. Find out who has hepatitis C, like that punk-ass black congressman, Hank Jackson or Johnson. He had hepatitis C. I wonder how he got it. Do you realize that if someone were to put that out, he'd probably have to give up his seat? Why are we so vicious and cutthroat with each other? But when we come up against other people, we've got more love than Bill Cosby in a Jell-O commercial.
Damn.
Next paragraph.
Okay. Can you tell me so I can do the read along exactly what's the
I'm on 102. I'm on 102.
Okay. The first sentence starts off with
what all of us Americans.
Okay. Hold on.
Dr. Winters, he's sort of like, I'm like on training. I'm like a student teacher, and he's sitting here. I'm hoping he doesn't beat my ass for like missing something. So I'm being intimidated by the elder here. But anyway, I try to make certain I cover the bases. Okay. What all of us Americans, black and white, are facing today is a racial crisis, which is composed in part of the accumulated results of the white liberal lying and dishonesty about race, caste, and class in this country. On the other hand, is also due to the superficial and intellectually empty racial propaganda projected over the years by Negro middle class moderation policies on civil rights. Fake ass boule, y'all. The liberal New York Post, which has for years been catering to the NAACP and later to Martin Luther King Jr., was forced to admit through Stan Opatowski, one of its reporters, that a class of Negroes that had revolted in Birmingham and transformed King's orderly protest movement into a race riot had nothing to hope for, no benefits to anticipate from whatever integrated gains King's properly behaved passive protesters would achieve. The liberal New York Post is very late in admitting that what many of us voiceless Negroes have been saying for years in criticisms of white liberalism that caters to the aims and aspirations of the middle class Negro. Belatedly, the liberals have discovered a class of Negroes in Birmingham, which Opatowski described as lost men. If these disprivileged Birmingham mavericks are lost, then we are all lost, for Negroes cited by Opatowski represent the majority of American Negroes. The majority of Negroes cannot be restrained or contained within the legalistic, gradualistic, passive moderation approach any longer. The civil rights movement has moved from the NAACP protest to broad and general rebellion. It is a rebellion which cannot be put down, a rebellion which, if not handled with the highest order of internal statesmanship, will lead to racial and social chaos. Opatowski came to the wrong conclusion about Birmingham's lost men. While it is true that integration movement offers a majority of the Negroes very little, it is far from proving that the majority of the Negroes are lost, i.e. lost to social history and eternity. If we are lost, there's nothing left but to join the Muslims or some other like movement for repatriation or separation. On the contrary, what the Negro Rebellion is proving in its own as yet inconclusive manner is that the United States is the greatest and most advanced capitalistic nation of the Western Combine. It is not at all exempt or immune from the forces of social change that are sweeping the world today. Unhappily, this is the fact which American whites will find most difficult to comprehend. Americans think they're very special and privileged people as they peer uncomprehendingly beyond the ocean beaches into a world racked and seething with revolution, discontent, and political turmoil. Americans have been lulled into a diluted fog of complacency by America's ability to maintain a long-term stability. It is expertly controlled. Stability is why there's so much perplexity, desperation, fear, and resentment shown by whites all over the country as the Negro protest movement moves into open rebellion. These attitudes are but a reflection of the uncontrollable fact that America at present has no clear answers to the problems emerging out of the racial crisis. President Robert Kennedy voiced this fact right after the Birmingham crisis when he said the fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south, where legal remedies are not at hand. This is the bitter truth which the NAACP et al. Could not admit. For to admit that there is no legal remedy for full integration means that the integrationist leadership is out on the limb. We American Negroes are not a lost ethnic minority in America. We must admit, however, that there's a very widespread psychology of alienation from American civilization, noted among many younger generation Negroes, could lead to the pessimistic conclusion, voiced by the Muslims and others, that there's no hope for Black people in white society. Add to this the negative attitudes of most whites, plus the incompetence and obsolescence of liberal remedies, and it is difficult for many not to believe with the Muslims that the white civilization is a sinking ship. The flaw for us in the sinking ship forecast is that we are more or less doomed to sink with it. The American Negro, caught in a social situation from which he cannot readily depart, retreat, or easily advance, resembles John Paul Sartre's existential man, who is condemned to be free. The American Negro must stand up and fight his way out of the social trap which Western civilization has ensnared him. But he can no longer struggle with the old methods alone. Protest actions of whatever nature are no longer enough. The Negro must now develop and begin to use a set of new ideas. What we are up against is the fact that the Western civilization is intellectually, spiritually, and morally bankrupt. It is a civilization that is no longer able to originate creative ideas and social thinking, and America is no exception to this creative decline that is sapping the vitality of the Western world. In this sense, white America has inherited a racial crisis that it cannot handle and is unable to create a solution for. It does not do violence to the collective white racial ego. The racial crisis in America is more than a question of what white Americans are going to do about this subclass of exploited Negro wards. It is also a broader question. Which way is America going as a nation, up or down? Beyond that, it is a question of which way is white civilization going. How do white people, Americans included, propose to accommodate themselves in an emerging world of non-white people over whom whites no longer have the right of unilateral dispensation? The racial crisis in America is an internal reflection of this contemporary worldwide problem of readjustment between ex-colonial masters and ex-colonial subjects. The so-called democratic heritage of the American tradition has served as historical camouflage to hide the fact that America participated in colonization through its peculiar institution of slavery. Although a very special kind of colonialism, as we shall elaborate later, slavery was an organic offshoot of European subjugation of Africa and the New World. After the Civil War, the Negro was transformed into a semi-colonial people, no different from any other semi-colonial people in South Africa or parts of Latin America. The historical development of the relationship between the races in America has cultivated a strange and unique pattern of intergroup psychologies between the Negro and white of various castes and classes. Many Negroes, especially those who aspire to leadership of one form or another, and the majority of whites have shown a very perverse tendency to overlook or deny exactly what America is as a nation. America never was the all-white nation that the national psychology pretends. America is and always was a multiracial, multinational, and culturally pluralistic. People who try to deny this fact would talk about Americans all speaking the same language or sharing the same customs, are merely propagating the myth about a simulated Americanism. America shares the English language with Canada, but they are two nations. The universality of Spanish in South America did not prevent the formation of several independent republics on the continent. If languages failed to break down racial fences or simulate the various American ethnic minorities, why cite the American language as proof of an Americanized idea America has never achieved? And let us not mention the Indians. Either we accept without further delusion that America is pluralistic and democratically adjust our economic, political, cultural, and administrative institutions to fit what the human is a human living fact, and cease believing in the mythology of assimilated Americanism based on the dominant white Protestant Anglo-Saxon ideal, or the racial crisis will be more and more exacerbated. This would be the approach to the evolutionary path for social change in America. It is possibly too late for this approach. It would require voluntary social planning and governmental intervention into the economy, the great bugbears of the free enterprise economic religion. America has grown up planlessly and chaotically, leaving her racial and ethnic minorities to shift for themselves while she cultivates the idea that America is an all-white Anglo-Saxon nation. This is a totally false image of psychology, whether individual or national, that tries to deny the essential facts about its social origin, is lying to itself and to the world. Such a psychology, individual or national, cannot deal effectively with social reality. America and its national psychology lies to itself that Anglo-Saxon and North European racial ingenuity plus the resources of a virgin continent built American capitalist democracy. America lies to itself that it was always from the beginning a democratic nation when its very constitution sanctioned and upheld chattel slavery. Moreover, America conveniently forgets that the first capitalist enterprise, banks and stock markets in the land, were made possible by accumulated capital accrued from the unpaid labor of Negro slaves. It would be too much to expect contemporary America to go back over its own history and reassess all these racial facts. Americans are not historically minded, and the capitalist free enterprise mentality only looks into the future in terms of monetary profits. A program of socially administered evolutionary changes in our economic, political, and cultural life seems very remote. A racial New Deal would cause more of an outcry than Roosevelt's reforms, even though these reforms were evolutionary methods to ward off revolutionary threats. If the reality of the American way of life lead us to rule out the possibility of voluntary evolutionary social change along racial or ethnically democratic lines, and we are then faced with the other alternative, revolutionary ideas and methods. But here we encounter a very unique and complex set of problems. For to transform the Negro Rebellion into a movement with revolutionary approaches, ideas, and appeals is an immense intellectual and organizational problem. Moreover, it poses what amounts to a new question in America. What precisely is revolutionary in form and content? This is not a simple question to answer because the only concept of social revolution that has come out of Western thought since the 19th century is a revolutionary overthrow of capital by the combined forces of labor. This is ruled out by our considerations because of the reality of the American capital-labor alliance. To speak then of the social revolution in the United States from a Negro point of view means a reinterpretation of the meaning of social revolution for our times. This may appear a startling statement, but it is, in all evidence, quite true. Investigating this problem, we American Negroes must not lose sight of one fact about the Western world and its intellectual traditions. New social frontiers do not cease to be simply because Western philosophers have no answers to the problems of the world. Still, we Afro-Americans, who have always been excluded to the fringe world of Western society, can learn a lot from Western philosophers and pick up where they left off. In this regard, the theories of social revolution brought up by Western philosophers such as Marx and others are bankrupt, passé, and irrelevant to the Western society today. Socialism has not come to the Western world through the revolt of the working classes of white nations. As a result, the whole Western world is in serious trouble because social revolution is today the prerogative of the colored people. Despite the fact that the Western white Marxists may attempt to cast colonial and semi-colonial revolutions in their own Marxian image, it is the fact that these revolutions are all indigenous, original, autonomous, and unique in themselves. Marx did not invent social revolution, but at the same time, this does not mean that we cannot learn many things from Marx. The failure of the Marxist revolution in Europe and America has led many intellectuals, especially in Europe, to attempt to reinvestigate and reinterpret the social revolution. The Negro intellectual must do the same if the Negro rebellion is to ever become a revolutionary movement in its own right. The Negro rebellion can learn much from other Western critics of revolutionary theory and arrive at its own answers for its own solution. Albert Camus, discussing rebellion and revolution, had this to say: rebellion by its nature is limited in scope. It is no more than an incoherent pronouncement. Revolution, on the contrary, originates in the realm of ideas. Specifically, it is the injection of ideas into a historical experience, while rebellion is the only movement that leads to individual experience into the realm of ideas. While even the collective history of a movement of rebellion is always that of a fruitless struggle with facts, of an obscure protest which involves neither methods nor reason, a revolution is an attempt to shape actions to ideas to fit the world into a theoretic frame. These words were written by a man who died relatively young, who had become increasingly disturbed and alarmed by the steady deterioration of the political, moral, and spiritual reality of Western Europe. Originally a French Marxist, Camus recoiled in the face of the obvious collapse and degeneration of the Marxian revolution between the two world wars and after. For our purposes, we need not go into this very complex question as to why the working classes of European white nations failed to make the hoped for revolution. Our immediate problem is not Europe, but America, where we live. However, it is enough to point out that the white capital labor alliance that has taken place in America has its parallel in Europe, where the white Marxist revolutionaries became less and less revolutionary, and more the European colonies became truly revolutionary. At the root of the whole question of the degeneration of Western Marxism in Europe was the colonial problem. It was not the Marxist plan that the colored colonies should become liberated before white socialism came to Europe. The fact is that what happened threw European capitalists and Marxists as well into a state of confusion and panic. Marxists in Europe talked like revolutionaries, but their internal politics became more and more geared to the necessities of preventing their own capitalist societies from collapse as a result of colonial losses. In Algeria, for example, where Camus was born, it is a fact that many French Marxists, when the racial showdown came, turned against the Algerian rebel forces. These facts and many more were not lost on Camus, who was an honest revolutionary defeated and confounded by the utter betrayal perpetuated by his own revolutionary tradition and the degeneration of Western morality. From Camus, we're able to learn from the most precise difference between a mere revolution, a mere rebellion, and a viable revolution. More than that, we understand why the Negro movement, which is a rebellion, has its revolutionary limitations. It is a movement without any unique ideas of its own. The key to its question of unique ideas is lost in the confusion of ideas, or better, the lack of positive ideas of what America really is as a nation and a true nature of the Negro's intrinsic relationship to the American reality. This is the problem that has not been adequately or honestly explored in all of its sociological ramifications. It could not be because, as we have pointed out, the national psychology of the dominant white ideal prefers to project the image of America as an all-white nation. Look at American films, television, and advertising media, etc. More than that, since we are dealing with a society which, besides wanting to be called an all-white nation, it is also the most extensively industrialized capitalist nation in the world, and it wants to desperately remain capitalistic in order to defend its free institutions by keeping Negroes excluded. White labor is not going to overthrow it. It behooves us to examine this American capitalism in order to determine just what kind of economic animal it is. What are its characteristics? What are its strong points? What are its weaknesses? American capitalism is not the same as other capitalisms in the Western world because it developed according to its own peculiar geographical, social, racial, political, and cultural climate. Moreover, American capitalism helps to sustain and prop up other capitalisms. What is crucial for capitalism as an economic system is that beyond the United States, capitalism has nowhere else to go in terms of development. America's the last hope of capitalism as a system. But in terms of revolutionary ideas, the Negro's relationship to the American system is a unique one, since we're excluded and also for other reasons not yet explored. One significant reason for this uniqueness is the social revolution today is a product of the underdeveloped section of the world's colored populations where there exists no such highly industrialized social base. For the Negro, this presents a novel situation. In fact, the most unique in the most unique in world history.
Let's stop here for a minute. It's very important. See, what people don't understand, and what he's saying is this: is that America, white America is a myth. White America has always been a myth. See, what we've been trying to do today is that we've been trying to do a revision of history. For years, we've been taught that we had no culture. We've been taught that we had no civilization. That was a lie. Because, see, America never evolved a culture because America was an oligarchy, not a democracy, an oligarchy. It was a state that was formed by rich people, and these rich people determined what was right and what was wrong. And so then American culture was really our culture. American culture is our culture. The music, the food, the dress, the swag, everything in America is based upon, in a sense, our culture. But what they did is that they had to hijack our culture because they had no culture. But at the same time, they had to hijack our culture. They had to make us believe that we had no culture. They had to teach us that we stole your language. You see, they had to teach you that because they didn't want you to understand that although they stole our language, who became the best speakers of English? Jesse Jackson, James Earl Jones, Martin Luther King. You see, these people, in a sense, are the epitome of speakers of the English language. We even did the language. We built America. We made all the great inventions. We made the telephone work. We made the electric light bulb work. We made the digital phone. We made, in a sense, the resistor. And the resistor is what they use today to try to, in a sense, make all the machines that they make are based upon a resistor based by us. This whole economy, we cleared the land. We built the roads. We built the railroads. But they want to teach you that the immigrants did this. No, the immigrants didn't do this. We did this. See, we are the foundational Black Americans. And see, what they did for years is they was able, in a sense, to keep us from studying our true history, to keep us from knowing our true contributions to America. You see, look at it from this perspective. They've always counted us as 3/5 of man. Now think about it. You see, if they've been counting us as 3/5 of man, are we only 40 million in this country? Hell no. We're over 100 million people in this country, but they've convinced that you're a minority. Why do they teach you a minority? Because what is the key part? What is the key part of the word minority is minor. They want to make you think you're a child. And they keep you childlike by making you, in a sense, not understand your contributions, your creation of this land, you see? And so, see, that's why they run away from that whole idea of a foundational Black American. That idea of being a foundational Black Americans mean that you are a unique people. And not only are you a unique people, but you're the foundation of the country. And see, that's why a lot of people hate my research. And a lot of people hate my research. And I've written over 40 books. And I've published 40 books on our history, 40 books on the history of Black people. Why? Because my books show that we are the foundation of this country. And you have an historical basis. See, that's what Harold Cruz, that's what Cruz was talking about. He's talking about back during the Black Power days, we created a slogan, but we didn't have the historical basis to support it. And see, that's what I've been about doing. And that's why we're doing this thing. See, just like you got Dr. Short, he's a great political scientist. Dr. Short is great because he uses a lot of jokes, but in every one of his jokes, it's a biting joke because it has an historical reality. And see, that's what you have to do. And that's what we're about today. That's what we're about today, dealing with the realities. And the realities is that American culture is our culture. America's greatness is our greatness. America's economic base. Look, ever since Black people started really contributing to the scientific development of America, America's fallen behind. You see, because the fact is this: is that they felt they could go to university and they could find those people from New York, and they felt those people from New York could lead them into paradise, could lead them into heaven. No, their only success, their only ability to survive was because Black people made this country. And see, that's the whole point. And that's why it's very important that we look at our history, we recognize our history, and see our true purpose in history. Because see, now we understand when from reading those pages, now you understand why has been so important for white people to keep us down. Why white people wanted us to not really know our history. What is critical race theory? I'm going to tell you what critical race theory is. Critical race theory is the final recognition that white people have created a race, and they've created a race in which they're going to win the race because they've already established what the results are. They've already established the criteria. You see, critical race theory has two things. Number one, white people hate us. Number two, white people want to kill us. And see, once you understand that white people hate us, white people want to kill us, white people created a race in which they're going to win, then you understand why they hate us so much. They hate us because of the fact that even though they've already established a race that we can't win, we still win every day. And we win every day because we have the power of God behind us. And that's why we have to call ourselves Black, like the ancient Egyptians. We had to call ourselves Black, like the ancient Sumerians. We had to call ourselves Black, like, in a sense, the people of Sumer. We had to call ourselves Black because Black recognizes that we are the children of God. And that's why they hate us so much, because even though they want to kill us, even though they want to, in a sense, take away everything from us, even though they want to win the race, we still somehow overcome. We still somehow win the race. God has still brought people to us like Dr. Short. They brought men like Dr. Short to teach us and show us where our future goes. You see.
Can I share something, Elder? When they talked about the degeneracy in American and Western culture, that's what you see. The non-binary, all this stuff. This is a really good, nasty book you can get. It's called Fuck Flu, Bug Chasing, and the Paz Brotherhood.
Can you show it again? Okay, that's what it looks like, y'all.
You want me to send that to you? I'll send it to you.
Yeah, if you can. Yeah,
I'm going to show you some degeneracy books. What came? Their reaction to the Black.
Can you show it? I just zoomed in.
The Black movement, Black people's movement for justice. Okay, to counter us, they came up with the gay movement. They came up with the white ethnic movement. They came up with this toxic, degenerate feminism. All of these things were because there were no ideas. The drugs, the free love, all this stuff. We don't want Black. We're willing to gut morally the whole society and ruin everything before we'll let Black folks even get a share of what they built. So look at what people consider social progress is having sex with kids. A man pulling out his dick in a woman's restroom. That's social progress. Okay, not reparations, not justice, not peace, not people having good health care, but a man pretending that his rectum is a vagina. Or I don't know if you saw the picture of the woman who calls herself a man who has a beard that's having a baby, and they're trying to pretend that the man's having a baby when it's a biological woman living as a man. And they're going to try to tell you that now men have babies and women have penises and all. And they're trying
to present the myth that a man can breastfeed his child. That's bullshit.
All of this, the same unreality of this being a pure white Anglo-Saxon nation, and they just did. They can't win that anymore. So then they've come out with this bullshit. And it's very interesting. The same sellout, moderate Negro bourgeois, they are now all pushing this filth on us.
Right.
Not reparations, not real change, not ending mass incarceration, not ending racial terrorism. But you know what? Maybe you should get your kid should have both her titties cut off when she's 15 and be a boy. Literally. So as the white society degenerates, those Negroes running after to be included, they degenerate and then come back and say gay is the new black and we need to get on board with this. This is what's happening to us. Cruz saw this. You have to understand, this book was written in 68. What happened in 69? Stonewall. The broad burning lesbians. All this stuff. A lot of you that are younger, you think this stuff's new. This has been steadily progressing since the late 50s. Right. And it's intensifying.
And see, and that's why they have such a hate. That's why they have such a hate, for this whole idea of foundational Black Americans. Because see, we've decided how we should be identified. We decide in a sense who we are. And this is so dangerous because, as Harold Cruz said, that was the missing link. The missing link to the Black Power movement was, number one, we didn't have an historical base. Number two, we didn't have a group identity. You see? And see, they recognized it when we said Black Power, Black Pride, Ungawa Black Power, Black Pride, Black Identity, love Black. They knew in the sense that if we continued that, then therefore we would have that identity piece. And by having that identity piece, you cannot crush a people who unify. And that's why they've sent out the Moors, and they've sent out the Hebrews, and they've sent out all these other people to talk about Black is not recognized in law. Fuck a Black recognized in law. You see? Black is recognized as the supreme identity of the greatest people who ever survived on the earth.
Another book, and this is cheap. I think you can get this used. I'm just holding Hard Hat Riot.
Somebody said, Dr. Short, that they need the titles to the other two books you displayed.
Well, why don't they can email me. I mean, it's really not that difficult. Or they could watch the playback. It's not hard.
I'm just
okay.
Also, Afro Lee, when Dr. Short sends you the title, put them in the description of the video.
Yeah, I can send you a couple of these.
In the description
I'll send you these while the next time we have a question thing. And that was a really good book. I bought that book called Teaching White Supremacy. And if you give me a second, I'll pull it out. People should get it to show how they've been lying to people, lying. They've been making lies as they go on because, you see, no lie lives forever. They're on borrowed time. They know it. Well, the reason that they're fighting the stuff in the school, they're doing all this stuff, is because at some point everything rises and falls. Right. Everything. We're born and we die. That happens to civilizations. Harold Cruz is saying two things that I want to bring out what I just read. And one, we're in America. If America goes down and we don't have a plan, we're as screwed as anybody else. The folk who benefited from our hundreds of years of abuse will hurt under any new system if we don't have a contingency plan. That's one. Number two, the white ethnic movement and the white hard hat movement, all this stuff, all of this was a reaction to Black people. They literally created all these movements to confuse and muddy the waters and not deal with what Dr. Winters and others were doing in those years. And it's also, there's a little Black lesbian by the name of Charlene Carruthers. She's a little stud. She lives in Chicago, by the way. You have a lot of studs in Chicago.
Unfortunately.
They all
you have a lot.
Unfortunately.
No, they're at the University of Chicago. It should be a stud factory. Let me just say to you, intersectionality. Intersectionality was created by Black lesbians to find a way to make Black people run up behind white liberal Marxist leftists. There's a group you have in Chicago called Black Youth 100.
Say that again. Run up behind.
Run up behind the white Marxists and liberals. But you have Black Youth 100, which is a Black Lives Matter offshoot group. that's funded by the Clintons and the Democratic Party right there near Chicago. And there's a lady named Kathy Cohen, if I'm getting her name right. And this woman, Charlene Carruthers, she's the one that came up with this idea of intersectionality. Show me a broad run around talk about intersectionality, and I'll show you a stud.
Yeah.
Intersectionality is a way to get Black folks into running. It's a new way to promote dead-end integration to us. And in this instance, they're using women and gays to push this dead-end bullshit burning house scenario to us. And by the way, I just want to say this to you, and we can stop. Part of the degeneracy is this transgender, queer, non-binary, all the stuff, by the way, and I'll happily send you the links, my brother. If I'm going to start sending this, when you start looking at who makes all of these crazy social theories about sex, I've been doing the research. At least if you do the quick Wikipedia searches, you'll find it's disproportionately Jewish.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'm not saying all. I'm just saying that you keep seeing it, and I've got to call it like I see.
Why? I'm going to tell you why. You have to understand the sense is that those people were the first people to recognize that God doesn't punish mankind. God doesn't punish mankind. God doesn't punish you for anything you do. Therefore, you have to judge yourself. And since you have to judge yourself, then it's up to you to be good or bad. And once those people realized that God doesn't judge mankind, they felt that they could do anything. But there is a return. There is karma. And so what happened is that once they realized that God doesn't judge mankind, and even though Christians teach you that God created a heaven, there's no such thing. I mean, a hell.
Well, I believe that. So I believe that, and I believe that God punishes people.
There's no such thing as a hell, and because Jews know this.
Well, it's a beautiful thought. Please let me have my fairy tales. I would love to see some people go. No, even if it doesn't exist, I still would like it to.
But people will go. But those people who go to hell, they create their own hell in their own mind. Because see, God is great, and that's why the Bible teaches you that God will forgive you on your deathbed. If God will forgive you on your deathbed, that means in the sense that He won't judge you. But there is a judgment, and that judgment comes from you. Jews recognize this. Remember, it was Jews in the military, but you brought up a very important point, Dr. Short, is that you brought this whole idea of transhumanism. People don't understand that this transhumanism became popular in 2014. And in less than 10 years, the pharmaceuticals and doctors and AI people have made billions of dollars. They're making money cutting off the genitals of those boys and girls. They're making money in a sense by making these drugs to help people in a sense not go into adolescence. This is all a plan. It's all a plan for the pharmaceuticals and the doctors and AI to make money. They want to get rid of women. They want to be able, in a sense, to make the children. They want, in a sense, to be able to just use, in a sense, their own ability to create people. And see, that's why today some children don't even know if they're a boy or a girl. And you know that some children are even now saying, because of the fact that they've been taught that you can be a boy or a girl, some kids, I'm sad to say, even think they're animals. Yes, they think they're animals.
One of them is Hunter Biden.
What's that?
Hunter Biden.
When you guys get a chance, there's a question. Somebody put a question in the chat room. Didn't say it's directed to anybody, so I guess either one of you or maybe both of you can answer this if you're ready. But the question comes from Rodney Mizzle asking question to the panel. So that's to the both of you. What do you think about Kennedy running for president in 2024?
You can handle that, Dr. Short. You brought it up a little while ago.
Well, frankly, I have two issues, and I'll say this early on. with Kennedy, too. I'm not anti, I'm just saying Kennedy is for eugenics, abortion, and LGBTQ. That's a deal breaker for me. I have a friend who is an associate of Mr. Kennedy, and I will make that known. I can't ever support anyone that's for killing Black babies or pushing this sexuality confusion. I'll vote for Trump first. And by the way, I like Kennedy's idea about the vaccines. I liked him. There's a lot of stuff I like. I want him to get justice for his father that got murdered, but he's going to have to run a real campaign where he runs as a maverick. If he tries to run like any old kind of Democrat, the same old shit we've normally seen, he will lose against someone like Trump, who has a committed base. If he's a Republican nominee, Trump would crucify him if he's going to run with the same old stuff, because the Democrats need Black votes. Donald Trump's numbers with Black people are higher than what people want to acknowledge. When you're talking about real stuff like a platinum plan, jobs, you don't want us overrun with illegals. You're trying to tamp down on the pedophilia and all this other kind of stuff. Trump's making more sense. If Kennedy basically wants to be a male Hillary Clinton, well, she lost, right? So I like we some of us are nostalgic about the Kennedys. So, but I'll just tell you, here in the DC area, he has a sister, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, who is a total racist, and she lost, thank God, when she ran years ago. And of course, I helped the opposing side. When I saw his sister, I spoke to her. The bitch ran. So you have some of these Kennedys are complete racists. They're nothing like the older ones who had their issues, but they kind of woke up. This generation of Kennedys, I think they're like the other civil rights kids. They feel like Black people owe them something over the assassination, as if we pulled the trigger on King or Malcolm X, or on the Kennedys or Medgar Evers. These people were all killed by white people. And Robert F. Kennedy, when he was in Indianapolis and heard about Dr. King's assassination, said that a white man had killed his brother. It seems like his kids don't remember what their own damn father said. We don't owe the Kennedys anything, and the Kennedys have let us down. The Kennedys were allied with, in your city of Chicago, with Daley. So the Kennedys were allies to the people who held the Black people down, that put them in those gulag projects. The Kennedys get a lot of credit for things because of the assassinations, but they didn't deliver much. Yeah. Am I lying, Doctor? Come on, speak to me, Elder.
They didn't get assassinated because they were supporting Black people. They got assassinated because the fact is that they were trying to fight the mafia, and they was against the war in Vietnam. They had nothing to do with us, you see. But the point is this, is that today we're on a more mature level, I believe. I believe that beginning with this whole idea of FBA is very important. And if you notice, it's people like Greg Carr and others who are fighting the whole idea of FBA, because the fact is this, is that they want to sell us, and they want to be able to get more integration so they can get more money for themselves.
If they're even getting any money, I don't even understand what some people are getting. If you're, I'm not trying to attack anyone, but how much money do the average university professors get? It's just not. It's not that big.
They're getting money on the side, man. They're getting money on the side.
You say millions?
They're getting money from the FBI. They're getting money from the CIA, you know. And so then they're all sellouts. They're all sellouts, and they're selling out because the fact is this, is that, listen, I'm gonna tell you something. White people love Black people who love Black people. But a lot of us, in a sense, we feel that when we love Black people, that white people are going to be against us. No, white people are not going to be against you because you love your own people. They're not going to be against you because you want to, in a sense, encourage Black history. They're not against you because of the fact, in the sense that you feel that Black people are great. You see, that's only what Coons believe. Because see, white people, they love white people. White people, they love black history. I mean, white people love white history. White people love being white. Therefore, they cannot be against you because you love being black. And people just don't get it. If you notice, Martin Luther King, as long as he talked about black people, he didn't get killed, did he? But when he started talking about Vietnam, they killed his ass. Malcolm X, as long as Malcolm X talked about black people, then Malcolm X was alive. When Malcolm X started talking about, the Middle East and all those other places, they killed him. No, they don't hate you. They don't hate you for loving black people. Why do you think the new black media can be on YouTube? Why do you think you can be on YouTube, Afro Elite? Why am I on YouTube talking this dish? They don't mind us talking about being black. It's only when you start getting into their international affairs. It's only when you start trying to talk about world events, because see, they don't make money in America, they make money overseas. And so they don't want you to be really talking about things that can mess with their pockets. See, Vietnam messed with their pockets. When Malcolm X was talking about the Middle East, that's messed with their pocketbooks. Remember that. Remember, as long as you talk about black issues, they don't give a damn about you. It's only when you start to try to bring everybody in, see? But no coalition can work with us, work for us. And the reason the coalition cannot work for us is because of the fact that, just like Harold Cruz said, nobody will support us, because to support us, remember, if anybody supports us, that means that we'll have an equal opportunity to win the race. But CRT teaches you, white people set a race so you can't win. White people set a race that you won't win. And yet, because of the fact that we have the support of God, they can't stop us. They can't stop us. Do you really think, you study the history of the world? No other slaves in the history of the world ever in a sense got into a state where they were more economically well-to-do than their masters. See, no other people but us. And that's because of the fact, in the sense, that we're loved by God, we're the chosen people of God. And that's why they work so hard to make you, in a sense, turn against yourself. That's why they work so hard to make you not understand that black has nothing to do with a color. Black has nothing to do with a race. Black relates to our identification with the God. All the gods of Egypt were painted what? Black. The Egyptians, they stopped calling themselves Cushites. They called themselves Kametru, the black people. But not because they were black, because they had various shades of brown. They called themselves black because we're part of God. We're the children of God. We're the blessed of God. See, when you call yourself black, you're acknowledging that relationship with God. You see, it's not the Hebrew people who are the chosen people, because it can't be the Hebrews, because they took their land away from them. Didn't God take their land away from them? Didn't God send their ass a pack? I'm asking you, history. They ran their ass out of there, didn't they? They had
to flee
to the Gentiles. You see? So they're not the chosen people. But here you are. You are people who were made a chattel slave. You was made a chattel slave. You was made property. They treated your ass like a damn dog. They treat your ass like a damn cow. They treat your ass like a piece of shit. And yet today, the people they treated like a dog, the people they treated like a piece of shit, the people they treated and they hated. Look at us today. We run this bad motherfucker. See? And it's not because of the fact they want you to. They can't stop you. The only thing that stops you is when you lose sight of reality. The only thing that stops you is when you begin, in a sense, to feel that you can't do. Because you can do what you can make it do what it do. See? But the point is this, is that to call yourself black is the most powerful word in the universe, because that means that you identify with God. When you call yourself black, that means that you can draw on the knowledge and power, the Akashic records. God will send you knowledge. When you say you're black, that means in a sense that you can speak to the ancestors. Our ancestors evolved in Africa 300,000 years ago. But if you're calling yourself a Negro, or you're calling yourself some other bullshit, African American, your ancestors can't speak to you. But when you call yourself black, the Sumerians, the Elamites, the Egyptians, the Olmec, they speak to you. They come to you in your dreams because you recognize who you are. You're black. They recognize who you represent because you're black. And that's why all the powers that be hate you. And that's why the world over, the most hated man on the planet Earth is an FBA man. Because an FBA man is a man who stands up. Your mom and your daddy taught your ass to fight and to stay strong. You see?
Yes, absolutely. I got a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're on fire. Now, this is, I guess, a follow-up question from somebody else about what you said about the Kennedy. Door of L asks, what if Kennedy is for reparations?
He's not going to be for reparations. Because if you get reparations, you get independence. You got to remember, Harold Cruz already made that plain. Is that they can't allow you to have the wealth. They can't allow you to have the money. Because if you have the money, you have the independence. See? But we will get our reparations. We're going to get our reparations. But they're not going to give it to you willingly. They're going to give it to you because we're going to follow a code, number one. They're going to give it to us because we're not going to just vote for anybody. You see? No. Kennedy will not say he will give you reparations. He'll talk around it, just like everybody else. What's the other question?
Like his uncle and his father.
The other question, I agree. The other question comes from Star Thompson, asking, if Trump wins again, what will those 4 years look like for Black people and everyone else?
It'll look the same as the years we've had with Jim Crow Joe Biden. You got to understand is that the point is this: is that Trump, what can Trump do to us that hasn't been done before? See, I told you, you don't understand. You're in the bosom of God. You're in the bosom of God. Do you really think they want you to have shit? Do you really think they want you to have shit? Hell no. They don't want you to have nothing. But they can't stop you. See? So Trump, what can he do? Trump didn't do anything to us. What did Trump do to us? Nothing. But they made Trump the boogeyman. I'm not saying vote for Trump, but the point is this: is that he didn't do anything to us. He didn't take anything away from us. A lot of white people started thinking they could get away with stuff, and every time those white people tried to attack us, they ended up being the ones that got in trouble. They ended up losing their jobs. No, Trump cannot do nothing to you. He's just a boogeyman. He's just like a ghost, and they want you to believe it. And 9-1, Trump didn't do what they told him before. Trump didn't do what he was told. That's why they didn't allow him in. Anybody with any common sense know that Trump did not lose that election. He did not lose the election. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump and Biden died of a heart attack before the election.
Well, I mean, they ain't in the best health.
Yeah.
Waiting for Dr. because we have another question. And to the chat room, thank you very much for your questions. You guys are asking very good questions.
What's the next question?
The next question comes from Billy I guess that's Gamby. Question for the panel: should we create our own political party and just call it the Black Party? We could unite all Black Americans in FBA.
Harold Cruz, he addressed that question. And Harold Cruz, he talked about the fact in the sense that both the Black nationalists and in a sense the black civil rights people are looking for integration. And because they're looking for integration, then therefore, in a sense, it's all about economics. You see, it doesn't matter having a party. Harold Cruz makes it clear it doesn't matter about having a party. It's having money to pay people off or to get people to do things for you. See, that's what Dr. Short was trying to explain earlier when he talked about the fact that those people, they control the government and they're a minority, but they have the money. See, Harold Cruz said in the sense that power comes from what you own. You got to own it. If you had having money is better than, in a sense, having a political party, because by having the money, you'll get the people to do what you want because you can pay them money.
And you can control them.
Right.
Control. That's to say, who cares what the president looks like? They didn't mind Obama being black as long as they controlled him.
Right. See, and that's why we don't need a black political party, because we had a black political party, it'd be full of number of coons. Look at Justin Pearson. He's the latest example. You know, the black media, the new black media always talking about you can't trust the old nigga. You can't trust these young niggas either.
Well, I found a lot of younger people are bigger coons than some of the older people, which is
right. But
it's crazy.
A coon is a coon. A coon is.
And forgive me for this constant moving. I was trying to find one book. Somehow it got snagged in my blankets. I'm going to send pictures of all of these to you, Brother Afro Elite, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
And the book is called Teaching. I'm about to send it all now. I'm going to send you a whole bunch of books.
Yeah.
One.
Well, you know, Afro Elite, I've had a good time talking, but we've been talking for 3 hours.
Yeah, we have been on here for 3 hours. So is there anything that you guys would like to wrap up? So you guys know I have your books and your information in the description below, your cash apps, all that stuff. So the audience, you guys can go purchase their books. You guys can go donate to their cash app. Their social medias is in the description below too. So you guys can follow them on social media as well too.
And
so
I can hang if you want. If y'all want to go, whatever it is people want.
I got to go, but I want to thank Melanie Perry for sending money to my
yeah, I hope someone sent me something. If they did, thank you.
And
everybody does.
And you can join my Patreon. And I hope you guys will join me tomorrow. I'll be on Reverend Dr. Shock Matthews. We're going to be talking tomorrow about the history of the early history of Muslims in North and South America, and I'm going to talk about why they brought the Spanish Inquisition over to Mexico, and that's because not only the Aztecs but other black people were Muslims. You didn't know the Aztecs were Muslims, did you? Yes, they teach you all that bullshit about that they had all these other religious things, and they was always killing the Mexicans. They was always killing those Mongoloids because you can't trust. Nobody is a black person's ally. Nobody wants to be our ally. And that's another thing that Harold Cruz makes clear to you. Nobody's our ally because everybody's jealous of us. And they're jealous of us because we are the sons and daughters of God, and they know it. They know it. You know. But, again, I got to go. So thank you very much. And I enjoyed the conversation tonight. And hopefully we'll do this again. And maybe I will finish this book or Dr. Short will get another book for us to talk about.
Well, we can stay in this because this is good. I'm hoping, are people happy? Or are they done? I'll do whatever.
What I would prefer, I think, because I like the combination of both of you all, and if Dr. Winters has to go, maybe we can pick this up later at a different date, so that way both of you all can be here at the same time. You know,
I'm fine. I'm just this is my big brother here, so if that makes him happy, I'm happy. I just want to make. I'm hoping people need to read this. And if they have questions, they can write me, wrandysshort@gmail.com. I'll try to answer. I just sent you some of the books that I was showing as an attachment,
Okay.
and we you know sometimes this thing is very dense, but this is a phenomenal book. If you read a good 100 pages in this book, and it give you a lot to think about for the rest of your life, and to be thinking about how we get up out of here. So I could say this to people, and I am thinking about it. I'm about getting my book club. I keep saying to people, I will. I like your platform. It's always open. They're constantly shutting some of us down, so I do other people's platforms just so I can get stuff out because they just constantly take stuff off. Like the NAACP thing that we did, it reached more than 4,300 people, but when I sent it, just someone really didn't like what we said about the NAACP. So I'm trying to prevent people from seeing it. Like the Black leadership thing that's reached, 7,000 people, and it picks up so many people a day. We're having relevant conversations. People do want to know. They don't want us to know that there are minds out here that want better. So, I mean, if people are done, I'll go up and get my snack on. And, but I also want to remind people, definitely, Dr. Winters has at least 40 published books. I'm a midget. I have 2. I want everybody to know that it's likely that Cory Booker is going to throw his hat in the ring to run for president. And if you do, you really should get your hands on this,
Spartacus.
because this is going to
throw it up again. Yeah.
This is Cory Booker has bullshitted the people of Newark and the people of New Jersey. He's got presidential aspirations. He's no different from the guy in the Tennessee legislature. It's an LGBTQ joint. And James Baldwin, as I always say to people, is proof that you can have a white dick in your mouth and still tell the truth. I'm confused about why people today with the black one in theirs can't. Or with black hooch, or sister has vagina pubic hair between her teeth, can't tell the truth because of her sex. It's outrageous.
Yes, sir.
And also I'm hoping, Brother Afro Elite, that you open your platform up, because the people in Africa that are passing legislation to try to tamp down on this bullshit, they need an opportunity to talk to American audiences. I really think that would really be wild if you had some African minister to talk about the stuff that Blinken and Biden are trying to push on them. Ask your audience, would they like to hear from some Africans saying that we don't want all this stuff? I think it would be cool.
Okay. All right. Well, if I can get their information, we can have that conversation. Yeah, we can set that up.
Okay.
Well, thank you, brothers. So y'all know the names. That's their Cash App name. So let's bless them with a very generous donation. Also, in the description below, you have their books, their information, where you can reach them, their emails if you have any questions or whatever. Dr. Winters is going to be on another platform tomorrow evening. You can, Dr. Winters, you want to talk about that briefly?
Well, I already said I'll be on on Reverend Shock Matthews' platform. We're going to be talking about the early history of Islam, Muslims in America. We're going to talk about the Aztecs who were Muslims. We're going to talk about a lot of other people.
Okay.
But again, thank you very much for allowing us to talk about this book, which we will continue, because that's only the first chapter.
Yes, we will continue this, y'all. I'm glad that you guys stayed with us. We've been on for over 3 hours, and you guys have been in here deep and heavy in the chat room. Much appreciation, much respect. Salute to every single last one of you all. Dr. Shorten, Dr. Winters, I'll talk to you all later, but let me close everything down.
Okay.
Say good evening to the chat.
All right. See ya.
All right, see you. Family, I respect you guys. I appreciate you guys. Much love and much respect. We've been in here for a minute, okay? We've been in here deep, too. I appreciate every single last one of you guys. I appreciate the Cash Apps. I didn't want to interrupt the speakers, the guests, so I didn't acknowledge that. Let me scroll. I have to scroll like all the way up, like super up, because I definitely want you guys to know how much I appreciate that. I gotta scroll up a lot. Okay, we have a cash app from Jay the Informant. He sends a $2 cash app. He's talking about he bought the book on eBay. The book is very affordable. It's very, very affordable. You guys can easily get the book. The book I showed you guys that I was like trying to read along, I rented that on Google Books. You have Amazon you can get books from, and you have Google Books you can also get books from, and you have Barnes and Noble. Those are where I get my books from most of the time, unless I go directly to, the person's site. And I've rented it for like $4.99. Okay, so you guys, if you all want to just rent the book, to buy the book, the ebook is only $10. So it's very, very affordable. Also, if you guys go to their websites, you guys can get their books as well too. Let me scroll up to the very next super chat. Scrolling up. The very next one. Okay, we have from our brother Ren 11B Airborne. He says class is definitely in session. Class was. We had a long class, but it was very beneficial class. And thank you very much for your 1999 super chat, my brother. I appreciate that. And then we have Yo MCC which is McCoy spelled differently 23, saying great content, Afro Elite, keep it up. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your support. Salute to you. Thank you very much for the $20 super chat. We've been in here deep. We've been in here heavy. They will be back. I know you guys was waiting since last time, and I told you they would come back, and they were here, and we were in here. We had a very heavy, very educational broadcast, and I appreciate every single last one of you guys for coming through. Thank you very much for that. And I will announce next time we will have them back on so we can continue this. Until then, you guys can follow me on my various social media pages, which is Afro Elites on Instagram and the Afro Elite on Twitter, which you guys should be, because that's where I will be giving the announcements as to when they will be returning. So you guys definitely want to be following me on those social media sites. Now, with that being said, my brothers and my sisters, I bid you all a good night. It's been a long night, but good night to you all. Be one salute to every single last one of you all, and you all have a good one.